My entitled manager made fun of me and my friend and constantly put us in shifts that we didn't want to do at the age of 15 years old. But after enduring their mistreatment for so long, we decided to get some petty revenge by showing up to work one weekend and doing absolutely nothing, forcing them to close down their pizza place for 2 days as a result. And I've honestly never been more satisfied about getting back at my boss because they treated us like garbage and they absolutely deserved it. Here's what happened. When I was 15 years old, I worked at a very popular pizza place in Canada. It was run and managed by a couple college kids that thought they were big stuff running a pizza joint. And it's like, ooh, congratulations. I was in between work and didn't want to work a fast food place, but my first choice of the local arena fell through because I had to be 16 to work with certain chemicals and stuff they had for the pool. And so because that was months away, it was obviously a no-go. So I bit the bullet and I applied. I got the job and I was hired for working in the kitchen. And within a month, they wanted me to learn how to make the dough. Now, I wasn't for it because that meant I'd have to come in every weekend at 6 o'clock in the morning to have dough ready for when they open at noon. I said fine, I'd learn it, but I don't want to do it every weekend. I was just a kid. I enjoyed my weekend time and was much happier working weeknights. They assured me that I would only have to work like one weekend dough shift a month, and I said, okay, great, let's do it. They got my partner in crime, who I'll call Scott for the sake of the story, to also agree to do the same thing. Well, we both learned how to do it and we nailed it. And within 2 weeks of learning, we were back-to-back weekend shifts, meaning that I worked every Saturday and Scott worked every Sunday going forward. I went to my boss to talk to her about it and she just laughed at me. She said, oh, well, too bad. And the entire group of them thought it was hilarious. All of the servers were in their 20s and we were the joke of the pizza joint. And they knew that we needed jobs and that we would not quit. I then went home one Saturday and my parents said the arena had called and wanted me to come in for another interview. So I went in and I was told that I would be offered the job in 2 weeks, the day after my birthday. I asked if they needed anyone else and they said yes, and I told them about my friend Scott and how he worked. Well, he said to hand in his resume and he would get it set up. So once I knew that I had this job in the bag, it was now my time to get some very petty revenge. The next Saturday, I went into work and I sat around and did absolutely nothing. I drank chocolate milk and I hung out in the booths of the restaurant twirling my thumbs. They eventually showed up for opening and I was standing there with my apron and name tag in hand. And it was right here that I looked at them and I said, I quit. My boss laughed and said, whatever, we were going to fire you anyways. Then my boss commented that if it were her, she wouldn't have even shown up at all and screwed her over by not making any dough at all. To which she ended that delightful insight by saying, idiot. Well, I laughed at her and I said, no, I didn't do that. Instead, I hung out all morning and did nothing. And oh, by the way, I also didn't make any dough. So guess what? You still have to pay me for my shift. Bye. And when I said this to her, the look on her face was absolutely golden. Now, as a result of my petty revenge, she ended up having to close the store for the day because they had no dough made. Then to top it all off, Scott repeated my quitting method the following day. And thus we worked together in the arena for the rest of high school, and we told that story fondly because my former managers were massive jerks and they absolutely had it coming. Okay, in my opinion, if you're gonna hire someone who's like 15 years old and teach them how to do a job, and they say to you, hey, I can't do this every weekend, I'm just a kid, I don't want to do that, and then still sign them up for practically every weekend and then laugh at them, then in my opinion, any kind of bad karma coming your way is absolutely deserved. Dude, there's no excuse for being a manager and owning a place like this, and then treating your employees like garbage. Like seriously, they can absolutely destroy your business. Why not treat them with respect and be like, oh, I totally understand, I'm gonna stay true to my word and not treat you like garbage. Like that is not that hard. You literally just have to treat people with respect. So in my opinion, I think this petty revenge was absolutely deserved. These people were nasty towards you and were talking crap about you and making fun of you. And like that would be more than enough for me to be like, oh cool, I'm gonna make your life miserable for 2 days. Because if you mess around, you're absolutely gonna find out. Especially when it comes from the people who are literally keeping your lights on. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not picking up my friend's girlfriend after her tennis class, despite the fact that I was already home and didn't want to leave? Because right now, my friend is blaming me for her having to wait like 2 hours until he could pick her up. And at this point, I don't know if I'm in the wrong. Here's how it all went down. To start things out, I have a very strict rule in my life. After I put my work clothes in the laundry basket, take a shower, and put on my sweat clothes, the day is over for me. It means I won't leave my house again until the next day when I put my work clothes on again in the morning. I generally dine at around 6 o'clock p.m. p.m. and take a shower by 7 o'clock. So 7 o'clock p.m. is usually when my day ends, and all of my friends absolutely know this. However, sometimes in case of emergency, I will put my work clothes on again and leave my home, and even leave my home in my sweat clothes if there isn't enough time. I absolutely hate going outside in my sweat clothes, but I will still do it when absolutely necessary. Last Thursday, shortly after 7 o'clock p.m., my friend called me up. He asked me to pick up his girlfriend at 8 o'clock from her tennis class and drive her home. I asked him why he couldn't do it himself, and he said he promised he would drive her home the day before, but the boss decided to force him to stay longer at work, which, if I'm willing to guess, is probably because he got caught slacking off on duty again. I told him I was already in my sweat clothes, but he still insisted, so I refused since that really just didn't seem like an emergency to me. Well, at almost 11 o'clock p.m., he knocked on my door to tell me that his girlfriend had to wait like 2 hours until he managed to leave work and pick her up. I asked him why she didn't call an Uber, and he said she didn't have the Uber app, but to me that seems like a her problem and not a me problem. And while he and his girlfriend had a big argument, they didn't break up. Maybe if she had broken a leg or something, I would have considered it an emergency, but waiting for 2 hours in a rainless, mild summer evening is absolutely nothing. The weather last Thursday evening was mild, and when I was a kid, I would often wait for like 2 hours after school for my father to pick me up, and sometimes the temperature was really cold. Sometimes I had to stand there in the cold or the rain or the snow, and it was miserable. So with all that in mind, am I the jerk for not picking up my friend's girlfriend? Because right now he is still really pissed off. Okay, honestly, in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk because this really is a silly thing to ask of someone. You're not the only person that this guy can call and be like, hey, can you pick up my girlfriend? So for him to act like, wow, she had to wait 2 hours because of you, it's like, no, sorry, that's not my problem. I can't make it, I'm not doing it, sorry, I'm staying home. And this is not you being selfish, but instead, it's you literally having boundaries. The lady was not in any danger, she just had to wait a little bit while her boyfriend got off work, so for her to have to wait for her boyfriend to get off work is just really silly to me. If it matters that much, then just find another ride home. Like, she couldn't have asked somebody at her tennis class to give her a ride home or something like that. Like, honestly, this feels really stupid, and it's almost like they're trying to blame you for their poor planning. So no, you're not the jerk, and honestly, this just doesn't fall on your shoulders at all. Am I overreacting for being upset after my boyfriend told me that he's not attracted to me? Because right now I'm kind of devastated and I just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. So my boyfriend and I have been together for 6 months. We have had a wonderfully healthy relationship full of communication. We are both divorcees and have really learned a lot, and we are actively applying it. Now, I have felt that something was off lately, and last night the conversation naturally came up and I asked him, hey, do you find me attractive? His answer is that no, he does not find me attractive biologically. He's attracted to skinny girls. Now, I've never been skinny, but I've always felt I was healthy and not obese. I am heavier right now, but I'm working to address that. My body mass index is still within a normal range, but this has just thrown me for a loop and has me questioning everything, including how I see myself. He insists that he loves and cares for me deeply and that I have all the qualities that he is looking for. He admits that he has been unhealthily influenced by society on what a woman should look like, and that his disgust is a biological response that is separate from all the other parts and how he feels about me. For context, he is carrying a little bit of weight himself, just like me, and acknowledges the hypocrisy. I hear what he is saying, but I'm absolutely devastated. I'm embarrassed and honestly mortified. So am I crazy? Is this a hard truth I need to understand? Because right now I really don't know what to do. Okay, in my opinion, the second someone says, hey, I don't find you attractive, sorry about that. I'm disgusted by you on a societal standard, sorry about that. Like, if someone said that to me, I would be like, oh, cool, yeah, we're breaking up. I'm not gonna stay with you. Because this is some garbage. Your boyfriend is a massive hypocrite, and the way he's acting is completely unfair for you. You deserve to be with someone who appreciates you and loves you for all of you, not someone who's gonna sit there and be like, well, I don't really find you attractive. You check a lot of boxes, but you're just not very pretty. Like, dude, then why are you with her if you don't find her attractive? What's going on right now? So no, you're not overreacting by being upset about this. I would be so pissed off if someone said that to me, because you deserve a partner who cares about you and actually finds you attractive, not this guy who's sitting there after 6 months by saying, well, society says that I shouldn't like you, so that's how I feel, because that is so idiotic and incredibly insensitive. A crazy homeless man tried to crash a wedding party that I was working security for, forcing me to chase this guy off by literally saying I was going to have him trespass if he didn't get lost. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of background, I work security doing staff escorts, building lockups, alarm response, and inspections of facilities that have been hired. For the most part, the job is uneventful, with people not paying attention to the time and running long with their booking. Every once in a while, though, I come across people who literally, if it were not for my training and reluctance to use use violence, I feel an almost overpowering urge to give them a thick ear. Now, tonight was supposed to be simple. A wedding reception was being held in the hall of the local library I secure every night at the same time. I enter through the usual way. I conduct the usual checks of the toilets, which will be important later on, just to make sure no one was trying to remain after hours, and proceed with my usual routine. It is by the last door I need to check that I found tonight's thorn in my proverbial paw. Sitting by one of the automatic exits, now locked, which many council buildings are smart doors capable of locking themselves, I find this person with their phone plugged into a charger, doing his best to ignore me when I told him the building was closed. Apparently, leaving was not on his to-do list for the night, as he just sat there, flicking through his phone while trying to tell me that he was waiting for a friend in the toilet, which, if you remember, I had checked there, and I found none but a wedding guest. Now, I thought I would give him the benefit of the doubt, and I checked the toilets again. There was a slim chance that someone had gone into them in the few minutes after I checked, and frankly, it would have been bad on the paperwork if I had simply assumed that he was lying. Well, to my complete and utter lack of surprise, there was no one there. Returning to the man, I told him I didn't appreciate being lied to, and again, I asked him to leave. Well, naturally, his story changed. His friend was upstairs, and I should go and find him. Now, do you remember those smart buildings I mentioned? That applies to doors inside the building as well as outside. There are only 4 ways into the upper level: through an elevator that after hours requires a pass card to activate, a door at the top of some stairs that could also be opened with a card, or someone opening the door from the upper level, and through the fire escapes that required a key to unlock. Knowing this, I called him out for another obvious lie, at which point the story changed again to his friend being a part of the wedding party. Now again, pursuing due diligence, I asked one of the guests if they knew the man, and while they didn't, they were kind enough to alert the bride, who confirmed that the man was unknown to her. Determined to remain civil one last time, I approached him and again I told him to leave, but with no apparent effect. Being totally fed up by this point, I pulled his phone charger and I threw it out the automatic doors to which he was seated. And yeah, that finally got his attention, as he stood up and tried to intimidate me with his height and claiming that I had just assaulted him. Knowing that I had not touched him for a second, I called his bluff and I opened the automatic doors, through which he finally left. He tried goading me into doing something stupid like going out there and fighting him, but I knew better than to stoop to his level. He also lost interest when I pointed out that there were cameras all over the area, and they would clearly show I had not touched him, and any fight would start with him being the instigator. Seeing that I wasn't going to give him what he wanted, he walked off around the corner of the building. Now this is where I was just a little bit stupid. I saw him staring at the cars parked next to the building, and thinking that he might be trying to work out which one was mine to damage it, I opened the door to monitor him from a distance. Well, it appears that is exactly what he was waiting for, as he quickly strolled back into the building, ignoring me once more when I repeatedly yelled at him to leave. He sauntered through the building's public area and left via the doors on the other side. As he left, I told the other wedding guests gathered on that side that this guy had been warned he was trespassing 4 times, and if he returned, they need to call the police straight away. And being from Australia, I was quickly informed that if he did return, they would happily thump him in the head. But thankfully, as far as I know, that's the extent of the incident. I've made a report and I will request that if he can be identified via the cameras, that really were there by the way, that he should be banned from the building, hopefully ensuring that I never have to deal with that jerk ever again, because dealing with this guy was a mess and honestly it was just an interruption to this wedding. Okay, I can say this straight up, I don't think I could ever work security. Confrontation in this way can almost definitely lead to like some kind of physical altercation, and that just sounds really scary. I don't know about you. Like, people are crazy out there, dude. You don't know if he had like a weapon on him or anything like that. That would really freak me out, and I just don't think I could handle that for a second. So clearly the original poster is like a beast and able to handle some really stressful situations, because this is definitely one I would not be able to handle. My boyfriend keeps pushing me to job hunt all day after I lost my job, and I'm honestly wondering if this is a fair thing for him to do, or if this is kind of toxic, because with all the pressure I'm under both in my family life and in my work life, I'm kind of at a point where I'm starting to crack at the seams and I just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so my boyfriend and I are 26 years old, and we've been officially together for 2 years. When we first got close, it felt like our goals aligned. He talked a lot about wanting to travel, find a remote job, and possibly move to or even study in Europe. He's a programmer, I'm a designer, and we worked at the same company. Now, I've got to be honest, the idea of moving abroad alone felt really scary to me, so having a partner with similar plans felt important and gave me a sense of stability. The problem is that over the past 2 years, most of these plans have remained just words. During this time, I found a higher paying remote job, I started saving money, and separately saved up for renovating an apartment that I bought together with my mom and sister. He also talked a lot about big goals, changing jobs and buying buying a new apartment with his parents, but I haven't seen any real progress. I really want to move forward in life, and I want to do it with him, but it often feels like I'm moving while he's standing still. I planned a short trip abroad for the New Year holidays because I was extremely burned out from work and wanted to rest during my official New Year vacation. My boyfriend also decided to come with me, and we each paid for ourselves for both the flights and accommodations. And by the way, all of this was planned before I knew I was going to lose my job. In early December this year, I was told that my contract would not be renewed, and I was informed only 3 days before it ended, even though it was originally supposed to be extended. For the past 2 weeks, I've been trying to find a remote job with the same salary, but due to hiring formalities beyond my control, I'm not being considered for many roles. Because of that, I want to accept a job offer in my city. It's a hybrid position, not fully remote, with a lower salary, which is typical for the market in my country. The online job market I'm targeting is weak right now, and it's important to me to have a stable income at least until the active hiring season begins. Now, I don't rely on my boyfriend financially, and I've always supported myself. In fact, he only offered to temporarily help with a loan for the trip until I find a job. I actually had the money for the trip, but I opted for the installment plan so I could pay for it gradually. At the same time, he has repeatedly said that I'm not trying hard enough to find a job, that I should be job hunting every day from 9 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock p.m., and that I should only consider remote positions. He considers this hybrid job not really suitable, even though right now financial stability matters more to me than ideal conditions. I originally wanted a remote job because it pays more and I don't like going to the office, but right now I need the income, so I'm willing to compromise. Over the past month, I've been feeling severe burnout from work. I'm also planning renovations after New Year's, while also carrying significant financial responsibility. I pay rent for the apartment where I live with my mom, as she's currently not working, and I cover groceries. At the moment, I simply don't have the energy to spend entire days actively job hunting, especially in a slow market. Recently, we had an argument, which wasn't really a harsh one, but afterwards, I was left feeling pressured, misunderstood, and that my efforts were being devalued rather than supported. I told him that I'm making this decision out of necessity right now, and that his advice to job hunt all day and his comments that this company isn't right for me are putting pressure on me and making me feel even worse. I also told him it feels strange to hear this from him specifically, from someone who has been trying to change jobs for the second or third year, but hasn't taken concrete steps to do so. After that, he said something like, "Do whatever you want. If you want to accept the offer, accept it. If not, then don't do it. I won't give any advice anymore." He also said that he only wants to leave his job for a better company and not just any job, but I can't help wondering how, over like 2 or 3 years, there wasn't a single better opportunity. He insists that he wasn't pressuring me, that he was just expressing his opinion, and that the decision is mine. He also said that I left my previous job because I wanted to work remotely and not depend on an office, but times and circumstances definitely change. So with all that in mind, am I overreacting by feeling this upset? And how can I tell the difference between a temporary difficult period or even just deeper incompatibility? What should I do? Okay, in my opinion, it seems like your boyfriend has like the best interest in mind, like he really does want you to find like the best job for yourself, but the way he's pressuring you, in my opinion, seems very tone deaf. Like this guy really doesn't see the fact that you have a lot going on. You have a lot on your plate, not to mention the fact that I kind of agree with you. It's probably better just to find something instead of sitting there being like, okay, well maybe I'll wait for the right job. Why not take something now and make some kind of money instead of looking around for the perfect job that might not even be there? So hopefully this works out, because I think the way your boyfriend's going about this is a little bit too aggressive, and I think it might be time for him to like pump the brakes. Am I the jerk for telling my grandpa that he doesn't get calls from his grandkids because he is a bully? Because after he tried to kick me out of his house all because I was talking too much, even going as far as saying he'll call the police on me if I don't leave, I'm honestly just at a point where I'm sick of this and I don't want to try and sugarcoat it anymore. But at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what's happening. So yesterday, I was at my grandpa's house. My grandfather and my grandma got new phones and were trying to set them up with my help. He called customer support and my grandma was trying to increase the font on her phone and the customer service rep was guiding us. Well, as we were working on our phones, my grandpa got really agitated. My grandma was trying to ask questions to the representative, and several times my grandpa shushed her. Now, I noticed, but I didn't think it was a big deal, and I was just showing my grandma the settings on the phone and how big I could make my font. My grandpa then leaned over and said, "Shut up." And I said to him, "No." He then said, "I'm telling you to be quiet." And I said to him, "No," again. He then suddenly stood up and took his jacket off and said to me, "Get out of my house." And again, I sat there and I said, "No." Then at this this point, he said he was going to call the police, and I just said, fine, go ahead. My grandma then grabbed my arm and told me to stay with her at the house too. He was then suddenly yelling at me, but I told him he was mean and a bully, and that's why none of his grandchildren call him. Well, he told my family about this, and my aunt texted me saying that I need to apologize. But honestly, I can't do it because what I said was true. The other grandkids don't like him, and he doesn't have a lot of respect. His whole life, he would go into these rage sessions, and in fact, in my late teens when I stayed with him, even though I don't currently, he kicked me out twice, once for breaking curfew, even though I didn't have a key and he refused to give me one, and the other time was for something I don't even remember. My younger brother, when he turned 18, stayed with him for maybe 2 months, and then he got kicked out for not talking to him enough. My older sister lasted maybe 4 months, then he flew in a rage and kicked her out too. But seriously, he goes through these moments where he's disappointed nobody talks to him because he has a lot of wisdom to impart, and everyone apparently is missing their opportunity to know him. He'll ask about my siblings, and I started to say, well, do you need their numbers? Because he wants information, but my siblings don't want to tell him anything. But regardless, he still says, well, I'm the grandfather. I need to know. They need to call me. So seriously, am I the jerk for telling the truth to my grandfather? Because right now, I'm not sure what to do. Okay, first of all, this guy escalated so fast, it's not even funny. He went from, you need to be quiet, you need to shut up, all the way to, I'm gonna call the cops if you don't get out. Like, what is going on right now? Dude, chill out. No wonder your grandma's like, hey, you need to stay here, don't leave the house. Because I bet this guy is physically mistreating pretty much anybody who gets within arm's length in private. Like, that's some crazy behavior, so with that in mind, no, you're not the jerk here. This guy needs to know the truth, and I'm sure he does know the truth. Because holy crap, it is a choice to act like that. I don't care how miserable your life is, there's no reason to take it out on other people. So no, you're not the jerk. This guy definitely deserved a little slice of humble pie, and the fact that he still can't understand why no one's gonna call him is honestly the most telling sign you need to see. An entitled Karen tries to get me fired after I refused to allow her to return items to our store that she had owned for literally over 3 years. Things got so bad that she even said she was going to sue us, all because of the way that I had treated her. And I'm honestly still blown away by this entitled Karen. Here's what happened. Years ago, I did retail customer service over the phone for a high-end retail company, the kind that sells single chairs for thousands of dollars. They have multiple brands they own, and our call center took calls for all of them. And this call regards their kids and teen brands. This woman calls in wanting to initiate a return, and 3 years ago, she bought a complete bedroom set from one of our kids' brands. She got bed, linen, tables, dressers, curtains, literally everything. It was not uncommon for people to call in and literally order an entire page out of our catalog. We had websites, but still sent out monthly catalogs as well. Rich people still like the catalogs, and the older generation would still place phone orders. She had bought the complete bedroom for her son, but now 3 years later, he was too big for all the furniture. She wanted to return everything that she bought for store credit and use that credit to buy all new items from our teen brands. Well, I politely advised her that we do have a 30-day return policy, and 3 years is far too outside that window for me to make any exceptions. Well, when I said that, this is when she threw an absolute temper tantrum. She started complaining about how she's been a customer for so long, and how dare I treat her this way. I then offered to give her a 10% discount if she wanted to place an order with me over the phone, and I could do that much without asking a supervisor, but that was still not good enough. She begins to demand that we send someone to her home to disassemble the furniture, pack all the items up, and take them back to the warehouse. She also wanted me to give her the store credit for the full value of the return right then and there over the phone, and give her a 25% discount on the new purchase because of how horribly I treated her by trying to refuse her return. So I tried to explain that she purchased the items from us, they were not leased or rented, and that 3 years was far beyond any reasonable exceptions for a 30-day return window. I suggested that she sell the items secondhand online, or even just have like a garage sale, but she went into a fit of rage. She started name-calling and making threats of lawsuit. Now at this point, there is nothing I can do to make this woman happy, and I know my supervisor and even her boss won't meet any of this lady's demands. I hand her over to my supervisor, who still refused the return and upped the discount offer to over 20%. Well, she never got the return for her stuff, but did place a new order with my supervisor with a 20% discount. And of course, she gave me a nasty review on the survey that she was automatically sent after our phone call. Sadly, the company I worked for cards nothing about logic and still held the bogus negative survey against me. My supervisor even admitted that there was nothing that I had the power to do to make that customer happy. but there must have been something more I could have said to make her happy. But of course, my supervisor couldn't articulate what that would be because that entitled Karen truly was just a miserable person. Wow, that is so unfair. Here you are trying to deal with some irrational human being, and you get blamed for something that absolutely is out of your control. Like, this lady really called up and was like, oh, I want to return items that we've used for 3 years. Also, give me a discount, and if you don't, I'm gonna get you fired. Like, what is happening right now? This is so crazy to me. Like, she went from 0 to 100, and in my eyes, that's like a clear indication that she's clearly trying to work the system. She knows she's not gonna be able to return these stupid items from 3 years ago, and unfortunately, you're the person she's gonna blame for that not happening. And it really just sucks that most customer service interactions really do end up like this. You have a spineless supervisor like the one you had to deal with, who was like, well, you could have done more, while also like not doing anything to advocate for you, and you have a customer who's blaming you for the 30-day return policy. It's like, lady, I just work here. I have nothing to do with that. The fact that she painted you as some horrible person and that you treated her horribly when you had nothing to do with her stupid decisions is absolutely baffling to me. So truly, I'm so sorry that you had to deal with this, because that entitled Karen was completely out of line. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for ditching a wedding that I was the maid of honor for after I found out that the bride and groom were trying to set me up with the best man? But despite the fact that I had a long-term boyfriend and these people were acting insane, I'm still being blamed and treated as if I left for no reason. And at this point, I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I was supposed to be the maid of honor at a wedding a few weeks ago, but I ended up just leaving and going home to my boyfriend of 6 years after the bride and groom tried to set me up with the best man. Now, for a bit of context, when my friend got engaged last year, I was excited for her, and even more excited when she asked me to be the maid of honor. As invites went out though, she asked me to not bring my boyfriend to the wedding. Now, I was really upset about that, but my boyfriend talked me down, telling me that weddings were expensive, and they were probably trying to keep the guest list down, and they didn't really know him, so it would be fine for me to go without him. That made sense to me, so I didn't say or do anything after that, and just continued with helping as I could as the maid of honor. Nothing else really concerning happened again until a couple days before the wedding. The bride asked me to give the best man a ride to and from the wedding, which was about a 4-hour drive. Now, I just thought it was part of it as he was a veteran and had his own issues surrounding that. So I gave him a ride up to the Airbnb that we were staying at before the wedding. The whole time he tried to make conversation that was just weird to me and was just not into it, and just trying my best to be nice to him. At the Airbnb with everyone, I immediately noticed that things were off. All of the other bridesmaids had their boyfriends there, and things were really awkward when I found out I was in a room with the best man. The next day before the rehearsal dinner, the bride and groom cornered me in a room to say that the best man was an incredible guy, and that I was blowing him off without really giving him a chance. But I told them, well, of course not, because I have a serious long-term boyfriend, which you guys specifically told me not to bring. It was then that the bride cut in and told me, well, that really isn't that serious since he hasn't proposed in so long. Well, I argued back that we were both still in school, and that's the reason why. We continued arguing for just a little while before I finally just said forget it and that I'm going home. I got called all sorts of awful names going out of the room, but I ended up packing up my stuff and then I left. I got a lot of calls on the way home, which I ignored until my boyfriend called. Apparently, the bride called him and told him I just left for no reason, and he called to check in on me. But I told him everything that had just happened, and he was kind of dumbstruck by all of it. Anyways, after the wedding, I've had the bride, the groom, and a lot of their friends call or message me telling me how horrible of a person I was for just leaving the night before the wedding for no reason, and none of which were receptive to my side of things, and it's starting to worry me that maybe I overreacted by just leaving like that. So am I the jerk in this situation for leaving early? What should I do? No, you're not the jerk. This is insane. The bride, the groom, literally anybody who's trying to be like, oh, why did you leave for no reason? All of them are gaslighting you, and every single one of them are horrible people. Because the bride and groom knew that you had a boyfriend. They knew you had a boyfriend, and they still made you bring this guy to the wedding, and also try to have you room with him. Like, that is crazy. Just because your boyfriend hasn't proposed to you doesn't mean that you're somehow available to get set up with the best man. And also, it's incredibly creepy. Like, they literally set you up, and you had to drive for 4 hours with this guy. Why on earth would they feel like they can ruin your relationship? Also that they can, like, I don't know, set you up with this guy that you've never met before. And what were they expecting with you guys rooming together? Like, seriously, this is so bizarre, it's not even funny. So no, you are not the jerk in this situation, and you didn't didn't do anything wrong. In fact, if I was in your shoes, I would have done the same thing, because what they did crossed a serious line and an obvious boundary that you would expect them to try and keep, because for them to set you up like that is incredibly toxic and very manipulative. Am I the jerk for getting a babysitter? All because my mom was keeping my daughter from going to a daycare. Because right now I'm still very pissed off at my mom, while she's also supposedly pissed off at me for keeping my daughter away from her. Here's what happened. So I'm a single mom with a 4-year-old daughter who we will call Sarah. Sarah and I live with my mom. We both work and Sarah goes to daycare full time. Now daycare would be about half my income, so I get a subsidy that covers $1,400 out of the $2,000 tuition. The only condition of the subsidy is that she actually has to show up. If she misses too many days, I lose the subsidy. I go to work at 7:30 in the morning and the daycare opens at 8 o'clock, so my mom would be the one to take Sarah to daycare. Sarah's main teacher is a 21-year-old girl. When I've talked to her, she's always been very animated and very energetic. She's great with kids, and Sarah always comes home saying this teacher brought stickers, she brought juice and bubbles, she did face painting, etc., and always has fun crafts that she did with her teacher. This teacher is her favorite person in the world right now, and Sarah often runs away from my mom to jump on this teacher in the mornings and hides when my mom picks her up because she doesn't want to leave this teacher. Well, my mom started to get jealous that Sarah likes the teacher better than her, so she started keeping her home from daycare on her days off or when she has only 1 to 2 easy clients. And it was then that I found out Sarah missed 5 days over the past 3 weeks. I asked my mom about it and she told me she wanted Sarah to spend more time with family instead of with teachers. But I told my mom that Sarah needs to be in daycare unless she's sick or I would lose the subsidy. She was arguing that if Sarah needs to be in daycare, she should be in one with more family values and not some rich white girl trying to save the poor kids. For reference, the teacher is a girl from a well-off family marrying into another well-off family, and the daycare isn't in the most well-off neighborhood in the first place. She has bins full of clothing for the kids, gave everyone a water bottle with their name on it, has a much nicer classroom than the other teachers, and drives a car worth more than my mom and I combined could make in a year. She's setting up a field trip to the local airport so her fiance can talk to the kids about flying planes, and so that they could also look at his jet. Well, when she tried to say this, I told her that I wouldn't. This is the best daycare that takes this subsidy, and I won't be moving her just because she's jealous. She was still insisting on Sarah either being with family or being in a more family-based daycare, so I got her a babysitter. I dropped her off to my neighbor at 7:30 when I leave for work, and she drops Sarah off at 8:15 on her way to take her kids to school. She only charges me $10 a day, and while I don't love the breakfast that she does give to Sarah, in the end, at least I know she's going to daycare, and I won't lose the subsidy. Well, my mom is now pissed off that I'm keeping Sarah away from her. So am I the jerk for sending Sarah off to a babysitter, all because of the things that my mom did? What should I do? No, you are definitely not in the wrong. What your mom did is absolutely insane. She literally decided, oh wow, I don't like the fact that my granddaughter isn't spending enough time with me. So now she's like, okay, we're gonna ruin your chance at this daycare. I'm gonna keep you home with me. That way you'll like me instead of that teacher. But it's like, what are you talking about? Shouldn't you be excited that this kid has a teacher that she likes? Because chances are later in life, she's not gonna have very good teachers that she's gonna have to deal with. So the fact that the original poster's mom stepped in and was like, no, you're gonna spend time with me. Like that is so weird, and it completely puts the original poster in jeopardy. Like they will literally lose that money that they're getting if they don't take their kid to this daycare. So the mom in this story is just completely ruining the entire process. So on that end, I don't blame you in the slightest for getting somebody else to take her to that daycare. Like if $10 is all it takes a day to make sure that happens, especially compared to what your mom put you through, then in my opinion, that's well worth it. Because what your mom did was completely unacceptable, and it gave you an unnecessary financial risk. Am I the jerk for taking over a family therapy session after my dad and his wife practically forced me and my sister to go to these sessions in the first place? Because right now they're very upset with me for taking over an entire session and telling them exactly how I feel about our family and the house. And at this point, I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 16-year-old male, and I'm currently in family therapy with my dad, his wife, my sister, and my 3 step-siblings, ages 10, 9, and 7. This blended family thing is pretty new still, with my dad being remarried for 2 years. My mom passed away, so I only have one home. And I'll be honest, I was never excited or really into the whole blended family thing, but I know that's not my decision. All 3 of my step-siblings have food allergies, and 2 have really bad ones. So the way we eat changed a lot, and this included places we eat at that were part of traditions. For most of my life, we would eat at this local noodle bar in town for the end of the school year. year, and we would also do this whenever we had some kind of school thing going on, such as a play or a graduation or some kind of report card. But now we're not allowed to go there anymore because of the allergies. Even just with my dad, it's a no-go. We can't bring ice cream into the house anymore because my step-siblings can't eat it, and only my dad and his wife can prepare food, so no more making a sandwich for myself either. Birthdays have also changed. My sister and I can no longer eat our preferred restaurant of choice because of my step-siblings, and we can't bring my favorite dish into the house either. So now it's a place that my step-siblings love and is acceptable for their allergies. For 2 years, Dad has talked about how glad we are to make all these changes and how family is worth it. About 4 months ago, his wife noticed my sister and I weren't engaged with the family in the way she thought we would be. We didn't talk to her about it, but she also noticed that my sister had cut me and her out of some photos of all of us and used just me and her for her room's art wall. So, because of all of this, she and Dad decided we needed some family therapy. Since we started about 2 months ago officially, there's been a lot about what the problem is and why we're there, and explaining the problem. And my dad also talked about all the good from a blended family, and he talks about all the changes, and about how happy we all are to make them. Well, last week I got so sick of it, and the therapist asked me if I was truly okay with them, and I just went off. I said, no, I'm not. I hate the changes. I stated that it's unfair, that I never said I wanted my step-siblings to celebrate my birthday more than I wanted my favorite foods, that these things were decided for me. I said I never would have made that decision because celebrating with them isn't important to me. I'd rather have a good time with the people that I love and enjoy food that I love instead. And I also said that I hate not being able to make a sandwich or buy snacks after school. I basically went off for the whole session between a rant and answering questions the therapist put to me. Well, my dad is now so mad at me for doing it, and his wife was really upset because her kids heard it. But she was also upset because she accepted on some level that I didn't want this ever. She was also kind of mad that I took up a whole session with my rant. So am I the jerk in this situation for taking over a family therapy? What should I do? No, you are not the jerk, because guess what? You didn't want to go to this therapy in the first place. If these people are going to force you into it, well, congratulations, let's have therapy. Let's really talk about what the issues are. And trust me, I completely understand where you're coming from, where you're like, look, I've got no autonomy over my life. I literally can't do anything anymore, and you people are trying to act like this is all okay with me. Because guess what? It's not. Like, this is something that needs to be said. If your dad and the wife really thought this would be like, oh yeah, we're so happy. We're so happy about all these decisions that we've made. Look how happy all the kids are. Like, they're crazy, because any therapist worth their weight in gold would look around and instantly be like, nah, something's off. What's really going on here? So no, of course you're not the jerk for taking up a session. And the fact that anyone would be mad at you is so telling that they are absolutely at fault. Like, why would they want a therapy session if they didn't want the truth? Did they think this therapy session would be like, oh yeah, let's convince him that he should be okay with this? Like, it really seems like this was some kind of weird ploy to try and get you on board by using a therapist against you, but I'm so glad that it backfired and you were able to say your piece, because your dad and his wife are completely at fault in this situation, and for them to pretend like this is all just completely okay, in my opinion, is super toxic. Am I the jerk for choosing my extended family over my dad after he gave me the ultimatum that I needed to choose one or the other? Because right now he is very upset, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my mom passed away when I was 5 years old. I'm a 17-year-old male, and my dad remarried when I was 8 years old and made a blended family with his wife and her 2 kids. Then they had 2 kids together, so I have step-siblings and half-siblings. My mom's family were a big part of my life for the first 6 years, and then my dad and them fought because my dad had met his wife by then, and he didn't like their reaction to the news. Essentially, he wanted to invite them over for my grandparents' yearly family barbecue, and my grandparents didn't want to include them. They told him that they couldn't accept my mom's replacement. He then got mad at them for feeling that's what he's been doing, and he told them they could forget about seeing either of us ever again. He tried to keep me from them, but they filed for grandparents' rights, and my dad's lawyer said that they would win. So he said I could see them once every 3 months for 4 hours, and it was way less than what I was used to, but it didn't stop me from being close to them. He invited them to his wedding, and they didn't show up, and this pissed him off more, and then he got super weird about it, and he suddenly started demanding invites again for his wife's kids when I was invited, and then when my half-siblings were born, he was including them in the attempt to force my family's hands, but they never invited them. They did ask me if I wanted them there, and I said not really, so they didn't change their mind. My dad always complained about them whenever my visits would come around. He really hated that I went, and that my step-siblings and my half-siblings couldn't. He tried to tell me that I should advocate for them to all be included, but I never replied to him because it was easier not to. Once I turned 14 years old, he got worse with that stuff, and he would complain that I was calling and texting them, and that I was keeping in touch more than once every 3 months. He would tell me they hate my siblings, that he didn't want us to have our family, but I told him that didn't upset me or make me mad, and it didn't change that I wanted to see them. The day I went back to school, which was my senior year, my dad told me since I was graduating in May that I would be 18 years old, and he needed to make it clear that I will need to choose, because I can't keep spreading time with people who refuse to include most of my family, and he basically said right then and there that I have to choose my family or them. Well, I told him that them were my family, and I would absolutely choose them. He didn't expect that answer, and he got pissed off, and told me I should always choose siblings over extended family. Then he acted like I hadn't given him an answer, because he told me that when he and his wife throw me a graduation party, I won't be allowed to invite my mom's side of the family. But I told him he doesn't need to throw me one because they would, and that I would make it clear that my choice will be them. My dad told me that isn't how it works, but I told him it is because he gave the ultimatum, and he needs to live with the consequences. He accused me of twisting his words and disrespecting him by throwing that in his face. So I honestly need to know, am I the jerk in this situation for all that's been going on? Because at this point, I really don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because your dad has clearly villainized your entire extended family. He has gone out of his way to try and convince you that they're bad people, while also saying you need to either choose them or us. And based on what you've described and the way he treats you in regards to them, I would choose my extended family all day if I was in your shoes. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, because the way your dad acted is honestly completely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding dress after she made fun of my body and put me down? Because right now I'm very upset and I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 21-year-old female, and I've always had a bit of a rocky relationship with my older sister. She's 26 years old, and we're pretty different in a lot of ways. She's always been super into fashion and makeup, while I'm more laid back and focus on school and work. Despite our differences, I thought we were at least civil until recently. My sister is getting married next year, and she's been really excited about finding the perfect wedding dress. Since she's trying to save money for other wedding costs, she asked if I could help pay for her dress as a sisterly gesture. I recently got a decent paying job and was willing to help her out, even though I thought it was a weird request. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, and we were at a family gathering, and I was wearing this dress that I felt good in, but I'm not a size 2. Well, out of nowhere, my sister made a snarky comment in front of everyone, saying how brave I was for wearing something so tight. I was embarrassed, but I didn't want to make a scene, so I let it slide. Well, later that night, she made another comment, and this time in private, about how she would never wear something like that unless she lost weight first. And when she said that, I got upset and told her that what she said really hurt my feelings, but she brushed it off, saying that she was just being honest. And now I don't feel like helping her out anymore with the wedding dress. And when I told her this, she flipped out, calling me selfish and petty, and she says that I'm ruining her big day over a joke, and that it's not fair for me to back out when I already agreed to help. My parents say I should just let it go and help her out, since apparently that's what sisters do, but I feel like she's completely crossed a line. So am I the jerk for backing out after she made fun of me? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. I think what she did was completely inappropriate, and I don't blame you for being like, wait a second, why should I help you out? Because in my opinion, if you're going to be joking about something, then everybody in the room needs to be laughing. And if the joke is about you and you're not laughing, then guess what? It's not a joke. It's literally them bullying you in a really mean way. And jokes at someone else's expense are not jokes. That's just you being rude. And your sister absolutely meant those comments too, by the way. You probably already know this, but she's disguising her comments as jokes to try and get away with it. So no, I don't blame you for backing out of that, because if I was in your shoes and I got disrespected in this way, I would have absolutely done the exact same thing. Two entitled old Karens demand that I move my table so that they can sit there instead of me, complaining that the other tables were in the sun. And despite the fact that I had my schoolwork all laid out on this table, and that I'd been there for almost an hour, these two Karens were refusing to take no for an answer, resulting in me having to shut them down right then and there. Here's what happened. So this happened earlier today, and I still can't believe it. I had an exam at my university, but before that, I had a class that left me with about 2.5 hours of free time. So I decided to head to a coffee shop nearby to do some last-minute studying. It's a spot where a lot of students go to study with their laptops, and usually you don't really see anyone there over 30 since it's literally right across my university. The weather was nice, so I decided to sit outside. It was around 1:30 p.m., so the place was pretty empty. Plenty of open tables both outside and inside. I ordered my coffee and started studying studying my notes spread out. And about 45 minutes later, I noticed two older women, probably around 75 to 78 years old, looking at me and glancing around the coffee shop. It was a bit odd, but I didn't think much of it at first. They sat down at a table, but then they got up and started walking towards me, which felt even weirder. I figured maybe they wanted an extra chair for my table, but no. They came up to me and asked if they could sit at my table. Now, I was confused and told them that there were plenty of empty tables around, including one right next to mine. But they said to me, "No, we want to sit at this table because the other tables are in the sun and we don't want to sit there." And it really took me a second to process this. Were they really expecting me to move so they could have my table? Especially while I was clearly studying with my notes and everything laid out? I told them again that there were plenty of other tables available and that I didn't understand why they wanted mine. But they kept insisting, can we sit here? And at this point, I wasn't sure if they wanted to sit with me or if they expected me to leave. But either way, I said, "No, you can't." And then I went back to my work. Well, when I said that, they looked so offended, as if I had somehow personally insulted them. After that, they went to the waitress and started complaining about the situation. But obviously, there wasn't much the waitress could do. Eventually, they ended up leaving the cafe clearly annoyed. And this is by far, honestly, one of the most entitled experiences from an old person I've ever had in my life. Yeah, that's super weird in my opinion. You don't go up to someone who's clearly established at a table and be like, "Okay, we want your table. Can we sit here instead of you? The other table's in the sun. We don't want to deal with that." It's like, I'm sorry, but I got here first. That's the way these things go. Like, I took the time to snag this spot, so I absolutely should be entitled to it. And it's not like you're about to get up anytime soon either. You had 2.5 hours to study, and this is, relatively speaking, a quiet place to study on campus. So for these two old people to be like, "Yeah, you gotta move, I want to sit there," like, that's super weird and just super entitled. And they should not have treated you like that because you definitely did not deserve it. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not using my trust fund to save my best friend from becoming homeless? Because right now she's facing eviction, and after I said no, that I won't pay for her rent, she called me stingy and selfish, saying that her siblings are gonna be homeless and it's gonna be my fault. Here's what happened. So in my country, every kid automatically gets a trust fund from the government that they receive when they turn 18, and the amount depends on how much the parents contribute to it, with most people getting around $1,000 to $2,000. My best friend received her trust fund back in April and got nearly $2,000 in total. She was really generous and decided to treat our entire friend group to dinner at an expensive restaurant. She also bought us multiple gifts, including giving me a paintbrush set, a book, a ring, some lip balm, and a scented candle. We all thought this was super sweet of her, and we were extremely grateful. A month later, I also received my trust fund on my 18th birthday, and it turns out that my parents had saved up nearly $20,000. I knew they had been saving up money for me, but I didn't realize it was this much. So I decided to learn from my friends' actions, and I took everyone out for brunch and I bought them each jewelry. Not long after that, my friend's family went through financial troubles. My friend used what was remaining of her trust fund to help out her family, but it wasn't enough. They're currently facing eviction if they don't pay the rent. And my friend reached out to me last week asking me for help and was practically begging me for over $100. Now, I feel bad, but I refused. I'm going to university very soon and I need that money. Buying gifts is one thing, but paying her rent might make her dependent on me, and she might continue asking me for rent money because I agreed one time. Well, when I said no, my friend was really upset with me, calling me selfish. She said that it's not like I need that much money anyways, since my parents would be paying for my university fees and my accommodation fees. Meanwhile, she has to take out student loans and get 2 jobs. She has 2 younger siblings ages 6 and 10, and she called me stingy for allowing them to be homeless, even though I have more than enough to help. I felt guilty, but I told her it's not my responsibility to take care of her family. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you're definitely not the jerk. Your friend is trying to use her younger siblings against you to try and be like, wow, you're gonna let them go homeless? And it's like, no, I'm not allowing anything. You're the one that can't pay for it. You are not to blame, all because they need money for rent. And honestly, if they really are like on the verge of homelessness, I would just give them the $100 and be like, okay, here you go, but I can't help you from here on out. Like, obviously, if you have the money, you should totally help out. But I totally understand your reasoning of being like, sorry, I can't help you. And also, the way that she bit your hand and basically treated you like garbage, all because you said no, you're not gonna help her out, like that, in my opinion, really stands out as like a manipulation tactic, especially when she's trying to be like, oh, think of the children. But it's like, seriously, why would you throw that at my doorstep and then try to blame me if you can't pay your rent? Like, why would you let it get to that point and then try to pretend like this this is my fault all because you didn't plan properly, and then call the person that would help you out stingy when they're like, no, I can't help you out with this. Like, that's not only incredibly backwards, but it also makes me think that maybe they're not being completely honest. I don't know, maybe they are being honest, but it definitely seems like they're trying to trick you into getting some money. So no, I don't think you're the jerk for keeping that money in your trust fund, because that's meant for college, and in my opinion, that's exactly where it should go towards. My wife is constantly complaining about work and life, and is always being short with me and very rude. And now I'm questioning if she might be acting entitled, because right now I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I've been thinking about this topic for a long time now, but as always, it's hard to find an answer without some other opinions. So if anyone here wants to weigh in to help me out, please feel more than welcome to do so. Now on to the actual case. I've been married to my current wife for almost 3 years, and overall it's great. We have our ups and downs just like everybody else, but we've always worked our problems out. However, there are some things my wife does that hurt me deeply, and she knows it but still does it. Firstly, she's always offended when I try to have some social life with a circle of friends from work. According to her, we never do things together, and it seems that I prefer to go out with friends rather than with her. Now, I would agree with her if it wasn't the fact that she refuses to go out whenever I ask her. She's always exhausted from work because she hates her current job, and it puts her on a frantic routine. That means I would never go out if I couldn't go with my friends. I understand how tired she constantly is and how lonely she may feel, but I wonder if there's any entitlement to complain about going out if she never feels like doing that. Secondly, she's always pissed at me for the pettiest of reasons. For example, last night we went to a comedy show that she really wanted to go to and got pissed off because when the show ended, I asked her out to have dinner and why not just have some drinks as well, but I didn't know already where to go. After not even 5 minutes, she was already extremely annoyed and saying, let's just go home. Eventually, I found a place for us to go out, but from the moment that she felt annoyed on, she was always on the phone and almost never even looked at me in the eyes. Thirdly, she complains a lot. Sometimes she even belittles me when she has the chance. For example, her period started this last night, and today she told me, if you were feeling the pain that I'm under right now, you wouldn't even stand up. And I get that she feels a lot of pain during those times, and it makes her feel like crap, but it offends me because she's the one that constantly complains about pain and tiredness. I never complain about those things, especially because I don't feel I have a space at home to do so, and in the end, I just suck up all the pain that I feel. I never tell her when I have migraines, even though I have chronic migraines all the time, and I know how painful those can strike. Adding to the previous point, she also constantly complains to me about her co-working friends as if they're living their lives wrong. There's this woman that broke up her relationship recently, and all she wants to do is go out and drink, and my wife always comments to me how she's not well for doing this, and that she should seek therapy. At those moments, I'm always thinking to myself, let that woman live her life. That is her way of dealing with everything that she's going through. And when I don't agree with my wife, I'm the inconsiderate one that doesn't create a safe space for her. Fourth, and I promise this is the final point, she wants to receive lots of love without giving me anything. If I get a mere pat on the head or a scratch in my beard, that's a day that she gave me a lot. On the other hand, I have to constantly spoil her, whether I feed her, cuddle with her until she's hot and dismisses me, or give her massages. Literally, she asks me to massage her calves every single day at least twice. Now, I hope I was able to describe everything as impartial as possible, because I'm really struggling to find out if that behavior is entitlement or not. But you know what? It strikes a doubt in me when I feel she should say I'm sorry and just doesn't. That's something I almost never hear, and thinking about it sometimes makes me feel very hurt. So I'm honestly not sure if she's being entitled or not, because at this point, I really don't know what to do. Okay, I gotta be completely honest, it doesn't sound like your wife is being entitled, but instead, it kinda sounds like she's depressed. I'm not a doctor and I'm not trying to diagnose her, but it sounds like she is not in a good place, and it kinda makes sense why she would be like really short with you and tired all the time, and just overall really frustrated with life. You've described a lot of things that I've personally experienced in my own life, where I hate my job, I'm in pain, and I just don't like what's going on in life. And this feels super similar. And on that note, the original poster actually did clarify that yes, she is depressed. She has been apparently diagnosed by her therapist, so it sounds like that's at least a good step in the right direction, because what you described does not sound good for either of you, and I really hope this works out sooner than later. An entitled customer demands to get service outside of our work hours by practically begging me in the parking lot to help him before I leave. And even though I told him that we are quite literally closed as I'm locking up the store, this guy refused to take no for an answer. Here's what happened. So I don't know if my job counts as retail, as its main service is shipping packages for customers, but we do sell stuff as well, so I think it qualifies. I had just finished shutting down the computers and running end of day on the point of sale, and was in the bathroom changing out of uniform platform when I heard someone try to open the locked door, but I don't think much of it and I just continue to change. The phone started ringing, but since it was after hours, I ignored it. After it went to voicemail, they called again, but still, since we're closed, I ignored it. Once I finished changing, I took my stuff up front and started to pull the gate out and sliding it into place. Well, the customer sees this and knocks on the window. I look at him and I shake my head and he goes back to his car. I finish locking up and leave the store, ensuring the door is locked one last time before leaving. Well, that's when the customer walks up to me. They then say, it says online that you're open until later. So I have to inform them that during the week we're open until that time, but on Saturdays we close early. Well, after I say that, he tries to argue again by saying, it says otherwise online. But I just simply tell him that whatever website he got that from is completely wrong. He then looks at me and says, so you won't help me? And I just respond by saying nope, and then I walk off. But like seriously, the lights are off, the gate is shut, the door is locked, and the sole employee is leaving the building. How many more signs do you need to understand that we are closed? Also, don't come up and expect service from an employee who's clocked out, especially as I've locked up and I'm walking out at the end of the day. Man, when I work customer service, I could not stand that. Here you are locking up for the day and someone literally walks up right as you close and they're like, wait a second, you're supposed to be open. And the truth of the matter is that they know that the store's not open longer. They're the ones that messed up and didn't get there sooner, and now they have to face the consequences of not being there on time, while also simultaneously trying to make this your problem. And it's always the same attitude of entitlement, where they try to pretend like, oh man, this is such an injustice against me. Are you really not gonna help me out? Like, that's insanely entitled and so obnoxious. So good for you for standing your ground, because this guy was absolutely out of line. An entitled Karen and her kids make my life a living nightmare as their server, as she acted incredibly rude, was condescending, and refused to even give me a tip after making my life a living nightmare. Here's what happened. So we had a family of 5 come in 30 minutes before closing, and we didn't really care as we still had a good amount of tables dining in still. I go to greet them and I'm mid-conversation asking how they are when the mom yells out that she wants all waters. I ask them if they have any questions over the menu, and the mom says that she's struggling between 2 of our plates. I let her know which one of those is a usual customer favorite, and then suddenly she replied with a super rude tone by saying, yeah, I know, I've ate here before. And I just thought to myself, well, okay then. Eventually they get the meals, and she tells me that everything looks like it was just slapped on together and there's no love in the food. So I just let her know that we can remake what she doesn't like, because honestly, it's just not worth the back and forth. I bring her a new meal, and she leaves it alone but keeps complaining to me about how it wasn't okay. I just apologize because at this point, I just want them to eat and go home. They all ordered milkshakes, and when I brought them out, she joked by saying the milkshakes were free because I took more than 5 minutes to make 5 milkshakes. And again, I'm just thinking to myself, yeah, whatever. They then proceeded to pay, and they immediately put no tip on the tip options, to which at that point, I was just getting fed up. Meanwhile, they pay, and her kid is running around the restaurant with her milkshake, and all of a sudden, we see her kid drop the milkshake all over the floor. I walk by, and guess what? They just laugh. Not even say sorry or anything like that. They just laughed at the mess they made, and then they left. And honestly, I hope they never come back because they were an absolute nightmare. Yeah, I can't stand customers like this because they really just don't care. They're not gonna tip you, nothing ever is gonna be good enough for them, and any mistake that anybody makes is going to be your fault even if you didn't do it. And the first meal that she got is a perfect example of that. Oh, it was slapped together, there was no love in this food. And it's like, yeah, there's no love in the food because you came in 30 minutes before closing, and you've been short with me and rude and given me an attitude since like the second you walked in. So yes, I totally understand where the original poster's coming from, because this kind of customer is honestly so annoying to deal with. My mom is constantly criticizing my behavior while refusing to ever listen to anything I ever have to say about her. And now, after enduring this my entire life, I'm honestly at my breaking point and I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. To start things out, my mother and I have been through a lot. We've had multiple phases of our relationship being rocky, and this year it's only been getting worse and worse. The beginning of the summer, I gave her an ultimatum. If we are not able to work through all of this on our own, we need a therapist, and the boundary that she's not allowed to say things that invalidate my experience, such as I never did that or that didn't happen. Yesterday, my mom does one of those things that she does where she says, I'm gonna tell you something that you probably won't like to hear. And this time, it's a familiar one. She said to me, I feel like you don't care about contributing to the household because you won't give me your school grant money that's left over after your tuition is paid. And when she said this, I just shut up because we've had this conversation 5 times. It's not worth me telling her the same things I always tell her just for a fight to break out. So I leave it and I walk away. Then, less than an hour later, she's like, I have something else I want to say. angry. And at that point, I just tell her no. I tell her I don't want to talk. I don't want to repeat the same conversations that we've had. But she always pushes me and I just blow up a little. She expresses that she thinks that she's had an epiphany as to why she's feeling the way she does. And I just say, okay, I'm sorry that I blew up. Let me just calm down for a minute. We go on to have a fairly productive conversation until I apparently trigger her. Now, I use the word trigger loosely, and it's not because I don't think triggers are real or any of that stuff, but rather because this particular trigger is any description of her behavior as being negative. In fact, there are several words that are banned because of this trigger, and we're talking words like yell, shout, scream, snap, snarl, gripe, complain, criticize, raise your voice, nasty, mean, loud, tense, angry. I mean, you name it, it's pretty much banned. We were having a productive conversation about appreciation and the ability to show it. She was talking about how she wishes I would do work in front of her or talk to her about how she looks tired, etc. And I was expressing the fact that I taught myself to never do these things because some of the times it's the wrong thing to do and then she screams at me. And obviously I didn't say that because I was dancing around her supposed trigger words, but I think you catch my drift. I believe my exact sentence was that you can have a negative reaction, snap or yell at me, or just be upset. Her reaction to this trigger is always resorting to dismissing what I'm telling her and telling me that it didn't happen. She then said to me, "This is really hard for me to hear from you right now because I haven't yelled at you for years." Now, we had a fight at the beginning of the summer that led to me giving her that ultimatum about finding a therapist, in which I finally managed to meet all of her requirements of me regulating my behavior and walked away appropriately, even though she was screaming like crazy at me from the kitchen as I was going down the stairs. So I just walked away, which is something I told her I would do every time she invalidates my experience. And in fact, we didn't talk for the rest of that day. Today, people are sleeping in, and I see on my phone that she had to go out at 2 o'clock in the morning to help a family friend. So I take care of the dogs. Now, while I'm finishing up my breakfast in the kitchen, suddenly everyone in the household is present. My mother says thank you for feeding the dogs, and I want to be nasty to her. I'm frustrated about the day before, and I'm angry at her. And I'm resentful that she can go about her way to help this random kid, but she doesn't care enough about our relationship to manage her own triggers. So I don't say anything. I ignore her and I take my food and then I just leave. I don't trust myself enough in that moment to say anything nice, so I don't say anything. Now, not immediately, but within the next 5 minutes, she comes down to my room and asks me if I'm not speaking to her. And I say, no, I'm not. She then says, well, why not? And I respond by saying that I'm feeling angry right now. Well, apparently this is unacceptable to her. She's then telling me, well, why could you possibly be angry? It went so well. Everyone did great. Meanwhile, she's standing in my doorway, trapping me in my room and trapping me in this conversation, demanding an explanation for why I feel the way I'm feeling and why I chose not to engage with her. I did my best to stay as calm as I could and communicate clearly about what I was feeling and why, but nothing I said was acceptable to her. It wasn't okay that I felt angry because of her actions. It wasn't okay that I felt frustrated that she's unable to even try to manage her own triggers. It wasn't okay that I'm upset that I'm always the one who has to remove myself from the situation. And she's standing there glaring at me, asking me to calm down. I have no way to walk away. She has trapped me in my room in this conversation and is repeatedly telling me that nothing happened. And I have to scream at her that she needs to leave in order to get her out of my doorway and get out of this conversation. She's allowed to tell me anytime that I'm too loud, or I sound angry, or that I'm shouting, or I'm screaming, or anything. And she's even allowed to tell me that I'm invalidating her feelings anytime she wants to, or that I need to calm down or walk away. But she never walks away. She never manages her triggers, or even treats me with the baseline respect of assuming that I'm not lying to make her look bad. I'm just so sick of this. She thinks she's entitled to my emotional support of her at any point in time, without regards of what I'm thinking or feeling, and she's entitled to say whatever she wants about my behavior. But if I criticize her, I'm the bad guy and nothing happened. She never apologizes for her behavior, she never makes amends, and she never changes her behavior. She thinks she's entitled to my constant improvement without putting any effort into our relationship. I wish to God that I didn't have to live here. My life is the best it's been in a long time, and she seems set on making sure that the beginning of my semester is a nightmare. I am so close to being able to take an actual career and actually break free of this garbage. I'm about to get a goal I've been working for so long to reach. She doesn't see that she's burning these bridges between us by refusing to even try and improve our relationship, because right now I'm extremely frustrated, and at this point I really don't know what to do. Okay, I'm gonna say this bluntly, but I really think that your mom's a narcissist. Like, she is absolutely hitting all the marks, in my head at least, of someone who is clearly trying to manipulate you and treat you like garbage. language. Like, my God, if I was in your shoes, I would be moving out yesterday. Like, there's no way I would want to live with that. Clearly, you're a way better person than me because you're at least trying to make this relationship work, but man, this sounds like a rough one. So seriously, I really hope you're able to get out of there sooner than later because your mom sounds like an absolute jerk. My toxic entitled classmate tries to pass off my hard work as his own during our group project, all while I'm recovering in the emergency room. So I decided to get some revenge by not only ensuring that my professor was aware of everything going on, but also making sure that he couldn't take credit for anything that I worked on. Here's what happened. So this happened a few semesters ago where I was taking a course in urban design. Everyone was grouped in threes, but one of my group members wanted to join another group with their friend. So I ended up with one other person. I'm not sure why the professor thought this was okay, but I wasn't too worried because I was fairly confident in my ability to do the work. The course incorporated previous studio courses to tie together in a massive topic of urban planning, which included architectural design, environmental sustainability, urban infrastructure, and historic preservation. I tried to brainstorm with my partner on which direction we should go. My idea was focused on residents, as housing would address a huge demand here in New York City. However, my partner seemed content on making the project about industrial buildings, so I just focused there. We brainstormed on different ideas, but got the impression that he just wanted me to take the lead, as he mostly agreed while not really giving much input. Well, weeks went by, and I constantly updated my partner on my progress via WhatsApp, while rarely getting any kind of feedback or updates from him. It annoyed me a bit, but I was still confident in my work, which was enough to get us through the next checkpoint during our next presentation. Well, at some point during the semester, I got a really terrible kidney stone. It wasn't from junk food or a poor diet. In fact, it was from eating too much black beans and chickpeas. Now, as a side note, I asked ChatGPT to give me a list of foods, which I used to come up with a meal plan that meets my macro needs. Now, I did feel better with my new diet, but it eventually led to me having my worst kidney stone of my life that ended up putting me in the emergency room. I was on all kinds of pain medications, and I had to stay there for several nights, but it didn't end there. The stone was so big that it got stuck, and I ended up needing surgery to put in a stent. I had to wait several more weeks and endure a lot of pain, and have to have another surgery just to remove the stent, all before I was finally recovering. Now, throughout this whole time, I managed to put in some work into my project, but you know what? I was surprised to learn that my partner did absolutely nothing and waited for me to continue my work. Like, what is going on? To make it even worse, I learned that he tried to present my work as his own. I mean, how can people be like that? I emailed my professor about my situation. I explained how I've done all the work so far and sent him screenshots of the chat, as well as my project file, which includes all of the history logs. The professor reminded me that during the final submission, everyone had to put their initials on the slides of the work that they worked on. And I thought to myself, okay, you got it. And it's right then that I started to plan. Now, luckily, I was recovered and ready to present my work, but I left out the initials as it wasn't required for the presentation and only for the final submission. And I did this because I really felt the need to see what he would do. I even tried to cut him some slack and gave him some talking points on the parts that I'd allow him to claim as his own, even though it was fully my work. But you know what? He didn't. He kept cutting me off during the presentation to talk about my project as if he had anything to do with it. He mostly repeated the same information that I mentioned while not bringing anything of value to point out. The final presentation had several judges who were comprised of local professionals in high-level positions within the industry. The conversation was always directed at me, so I had a good feeling that everyone understood that I did most of the work, as I knew all the intimate knowledge of the parts. Then came the last day to submit our work. The final slides included my initials on every single page. Apparently, my partner missed that part about the initials and also submitted an older version of my work. A few weeks go by and I hit him up asking what he got, and I was surprised to learn that he actually passed with a C+, but he was even more surprised to hear that I received an A- and promptly said he will have a talk with the professor on why he received such a low grade. So honestly, why are these people like this? But regardless, at the end of the day, I did do everything as instructed, and as a result, I ended up with one heck of a semester. Man, this story really makes me mad because this absolutely is so unfair. Here you are in the hospital, and you find out that your project partner is trying to pass off your work as your own. Like, that's enough to make me go crazy, and that really would tick me off beyond end. So truly, good for you for getting back at this guy, because for him to try and take your work like that is truly incredibly toxic. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My job is quite literally the most exhausting environment I've ever worked at, and I seriously hope I never work in a place like this ever again. Here's what happened. So I work at a gas station/grocery store, and it is actually my first time working in this type of environment, and it most likely will be my last. I have become completely mentally drained by how dumb people truly are. I mean, I knew people were dumb, but I had no idea just how dumb. It's like there is a stupid contest, and every 30 minutes a new contestant shows up to try and one-up the other one. In fact, just today alone, I had 2 transactions that have blown my mind, and I'm not even halfway through my shift. Contestant number 1 is this guy that looks to be about 30 years old, and he looks pretty normal. He has just a few things to ring up, and we do so as normal. When it's time to pay, he swipes his card and just blankly stares at the pin pad. He looks at me and I look at him, and there's a good bit of awkward silence between the two of us. He then finally says to me with the most blank expression, "It's asking me if I want cash back, but I don't want cash back." So I say to him, "Please push the button that says no," as there is literally only 2 button options on the screen. He can either press yes or no. He keeps staring at me in complete radio silence. I then just reach over the counter and push the button for him, as I simply don't have time for this. There are people waiting after all. But yet again, he stares in silence, saying, "No, it's asking for my PIN number." And at this point, I'm in disbelief. So I tell him, "Okay, well, enter your PIN number." And thankfully, he does so without hesitation. We then finish the transaction, and thankfully he leaves. And it makes me think, this simply can't be your first time using a debit card, or even seeing a cashback prompt, or even entering your PIN number, right? Well, clearly I must have been wrong. Contestant number 2 walks in the front door, sees me checking someone out, and blurts out, "Are you guys open right now?" And by the way, real quick, the store I work at is famously open 24 hours a day. At that moment, I try as hard as I can not to say, "No, we're closed, I'm here for fun." But I reply with a simple yes, because he is staring at me like he wants a genuine reply to what just feels like an extremely dumb question without the context of where he is and what he sees happening around him. And right then and there, I just know that he's going to get up to the counter and be the most annoying person of all time. And yep, he starts asking me questions that I can't answer with a simple yes or no, like forcing me to talk to him in a way. We get to the checkout portion with me trying to minimize conversation as much as I possibly can, and I see him pull out his driver's license and start trying to swipe it like a credit card. And you know what? I let him do it a few more times before I finally say, "That's your driver's license." Well, he doesn't say a word. He does a full 180 turn and completely walks out of the store, leaving everything that he grabbed on the counter and doesn't come back. Now, it's not these 2 interactions alone. It's these types of interactions repeatedly and more frequently than you would believe that just becomes so exhausting. Like someone looking at me and blurting out, "How much does this cost?" from the other side of the store. And it's like, I don't know, you jelly-filled donut. There's probably 1,000 different items on the shelves, and each one is typically labeled. Plus, I can't even see what you're referring to. But overall, I am simply exhausted by this job, and I seriously hope I don't have to work in a place like this ever again. Yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from, because seriously, some customers are just like blatantly stupid. They don't know how to do anything, they don't know what they want, and if you don't give in to their demands, they just completely take it out on you. Thankfully, the people you dealt with were stupid but harmless, but trust me, when they're stupid and harmful, it quite literally will ruin your week. So hopefully you're able to find a better job than this place, because what you described sounds incredibly exhausting. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for cutting off my entire family after my brother and girlfriend accused me of something that I definitely didn't do that resulted in me being exiled from the family? Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm a 24-year-old male, and I feel like my life has been ripped apart by people who were supposed to love me the most. This all started about 6 years ago, and I'm still struggling to come to terms with it. I've been dating a woman that we will call Emily ever since high school. Our families were that close, and our parents were childhood friends, and we grew up together, and I thought that I would end up marrying her. We had spent nearly our entire lives side by side, going to the same schools, hanging out with the same friends, even going on family vacations together. She was my first love, and I truly believe that we were forever. Then there's my older brother, who we will call Alex. He's always been the golden child. Smart, charismatic, successful. He was my parents' favorite, but I never thought that would matter until everything fell apart. 6 years ago, Emily accused me of mistreating her in the worst possible way, if you know what I mean. And when she did this, I was completely blindsided. We had been together for years. Why would she say something like that? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Then, to make matters worse, Alex stepped in, backing her up. He told our parents that he had witnessed me behaving inappropriately towards her at a party, and he claimed that he had been protecting her, and my parents just ate it up. No one believed me. I was horrified, confused and heartbroken, but my parents didn't even ask for my side of the story. They believed Alex and Emily without any question. I was kicked out of the house within days, and the entire community turned its back on me. Emily's father, who had been like a second father to me, also cut all ties with me. I lost everything. My girlfriend, my family, my reputation. My parents told me they didn't want to see me again until I got help for something I hadn't even done. I was 18 at the time and had nowhere to go. I ended up crashing at a friend's place for a while, but emotionally, I was a wreck. I spiraled into depression and alcoholism, using anything I could to numb the pain of being abandoned and falsely accused by the people I trusted the most. For years, I struggled to move on. I changed cities, started therapy, and slowly started rebuilding my life. But the betrayal still haunted me. Dating was nearly impossible because I couldn't shake the feeling that people would turn on me, just like Emily and Alex did. My family never reached out, and I never tried to contact them either. I couldn't forgive them for kicking me out based on nothing but lies. Then, about 6 months ago, everything changed. One of Emily's old friends, who we will call Lisa, who had stopped talking to her after the fallout, reached out to me. She told me that she couldn't live with the guilt anymore and that she had something to confess. She revealed that Emily and Alex had been in love with each other for years. They had started seeing each other behind my back while we were still together, and when Emily wanted to leave me for Alex, they both came up with a false accusation as a way to force me out of the picture. Alex knew that if he backed me up, my parents would believe them without a second thought, and it worked. Emily and Alex got together immediately after I was kicked out. Now they're married, and as far as I know, they've built the perfect life, while I was left to pick up the pieces of my own. But here's where it gets even more twisted. After Lisa told me the truth, she went to my parents. She couldn't stand knowing the truth anymore, and she wanted to know that they had thrown their son away for a lie. Well, my parents were shocked. Lisa explained how Alex had manipulated Emily, how they had both set me up to be the scapegoat, and my parents reached out to me soon after, begging to meet up and talk to me. They were devastating and crying on the phone, telling me how sorry they were for not believing me. They admitted that they had been blinded by their trust in Alex and their love for Emily. Now, at first, I thought I'd feel some kind of satisfaction from finally being vindicated, but all I felt was anger. It took them 6 years to figure out the truth, and even now they wanted to fix things like nothing had happened. But the worst part about it is that they have forgiven Alex and Emily. My parents say that family is family, and that what's done is done. They still love Alex, and they've even welcomed Emily back into their lives. They want us all to reconcile and to put this behind us and act as if the last 6 years didn't destroy me. I haven't responded to their latest attempts to reach out, and I don't know if I can ever forgive them for what they did. They threw me out based on a lie, abandoned me when I needed them the most, and now they want me to just get over it because Alex and Emily are supposedly family. So am I the jerk for cutting off my family, even after they found out the truth about what really happened? Because right now I am so angry that I seriously don't know what to do. Oh my god, I am so sorry you went through this. Like seriously, this is insane in my opinion. Not only did you have an awful girlfriend who was cheating on you, but also she accused you of something horrifying. Like there's no excuse for that, and in my opinion there is no forgiving that. Like I would never trust my family ever again if someone did that to me and they believed them. But even on top of that, if they didn't believe me or even like begin to understand my side of things and just automatically said, no, Emily said you did this and Alex is backing her up. You're out of the family. Don't come back until you get help. Like I would never trust those people ever again. It's also equally insulting that your family is welcoming back Alex and Emily and they're just like, listen, family is family. What's done is done. We need to get over it. And it's like, dude, I've spent 6 years on my own figuring out my life because you turned your back on me. And suddenly the onus of like forgiveness is on my shoulders? Like, no, I do not think so. Because if I was in your shoes, I would not feel like these people have earned my forgiveness at all. And honestly, I don't think I could forgive them if someone did that to me, like legitimately. I would never trust them again and they would be completely out of my life. So to that end, I don't think you're the jerk at all for cutting them out of your life because they literally ruined yours. And I just don't think that's something that I could ever forgive, especially overnight. My in-laws spent hundreds of thousands of dollars just to try and live near us so that they could see their grandkid. But as a result, they completely ruined their lives, spending more money than they ever thought possible, all in some kind of effort to build a house closer to us. Here's what happened. Back in 2016, my wife and I decided to buy vacant land about 3 hours from where we live. The jobs were better there for both of us, and we were sick and tired of our hometown. We were going to save up for a few more years and build our forever home. We are only children with the only grandchild, and the grandparents were very active in our lives and the child's life. We offered them to go in with us on land and they could build a house too. My parents agreed, but the in-laws said no, because they just can't think that far ahead into the future. So we bought 5 acres with my parents. Fast forward forward to 2020 and we started building and we've moved into a rental nearby. And when we did that, my in-laws freaked out. My mother-in-law starts crying that we can't take away their grandchild. They say it's unfair to move somewhere they can't afford to move to, but we remind them that it's only a 3-hour drive away and that we gave them the chance to go in with us to make it affordable. And because they didn't go in with us, we didn't buy land zoned for 3 families. Well, a few weeks after we moved, the in-laws call us. They say that they have a plan. They're going to sell their place, which is completely paid off, and buy a small plot of land an hour away from us in the mountains. And then they're going to put a manufactured home on it. Now, this was going to be affordable because my father-in-law is a retired civil engineer and insisted that he could be his own general contractor. Well, now we had just built a house. We know what a pain in the rear end it is and how unexpectedly expensive it is. Both of the in-laws were retired, and we had recently found out that they had almost no savings. And this is all despite making low 6 figures in a low cost of living area for the last 25 years. And in fact, they were living off of Social Security. So we told them that they should keep their house that is paid off and just make the drive to see us, because this was going to be a lot more expensive than they were planning. My father-in-law showed me his budget, and it looked like it was based on building costs from the 90s. For example, our well and pump cost $25,000, but his budget is only for $5,000. When I pointed out his estimates were way too low, he got mad at me and said I overpaid. Now, my father-in-law is extremely old-fashioned and from a rural Missouri. He still goes to the store or mechanic and tries to barter for services. Well, true to form, my father-in-law found someone to buy their house for 75% of market value cash plus services. The guy was a contractor that put up fences around dairies. And honestly, I have no idea how my father-in-law thought this guy would help, but my father-in-law insisted the man was very handy. So that left them with $300,000 for this project, and trust me, this is California, so that is not a lot. They bought the mobile home for $150,000, and that included a $20,000 discount because my father-in-law insisted that he could set the home on the foundation and finish it, meaning that he would install carpets and doors and other things the company usually does, all for much less than that. But by my math, they actually had just barely made enough for electric, trenching, septic, water, foundation, finishing, grading, and permits, and the fees. My father-in-law got bids for everything, which all looked reasonable to me, but he insisted that they were way too high, so he was going to wait for the market to come down. He did take the bid for the foundation though, and ended up getting it poured. In the meantime, he bought a fifth wheel to live on the property, and my mother-in-law moved in with a neighbor and lived in their fifth wheel. My father-in-law then went on what I can only best describe as a spending spree. Anything he thought was a good deal that he could turn around and sell for more, he ended up buying. I showed up at his fifth wheel, and there was just tons of garbage all over the place. Like, here's an incomplete list of some of the things he bought. He got a used Cadillac SUV even though he already had 2 cars. He also got hay storage that goes on the back of his horse trailer. He bought 3 stoves that were open box from Lowe's, some slightly damaged cabinets from Lowe's, 300 feet of steel piping that might be used for fencing, 6 gas-powered generators, a used saddle, and tons of parts for his truck. The generators were because he refused to pay for any hookup fees because they would report him to the county and make him pay a permit, as well as school fees he was trying to avoid. So his idea was that he would constantly run generators for power. When we pointed out that they were loud, he had neighbors, and couldn't run them overnight for things like his fridge, he said to me, "I'll just push the fridge outside every night. It is pretty cold here." Well, after the mobile home arrived, he realized he needed to clear trees. He didn't want to pay a licensed contractor, so he paid someone who he met at a hardware store to do it. Well, they dropped a massive tree on the foundation, which completely shattered it. And for reasons I still do not understand, he put the mobile home on blocks over the foundation before fixing it. He was now afraid to remove any more trees, so now there is just a giant tree 3 feet in front of their front door, and the door cannot open all the way. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law also went on a shopping bender and bought all new furniture while doing nothing to help out with the actual project. All she did was complain about what my father-in-law was doing and how long it was taking. Now, fast forward 2 years later, and my mother-in-law has had to move in with her sister and wants a divorce. My mother-in-law asked me for help for finishing this project so she can sell it and get her share. I meet with my father-in-law and I tell him that I'm gonna get some contractors up here just so they can finish the job. And I was then informed that they still had $90,000 in the building fund. So I called all my contractors and I got bids, and we could just barely get everything paid for except for permits and fees for that amount because my friends were definitely cutting me a deal. I mean, they built my house and I gave them several referrals. So I asked to see the money before my friends start the project, and guess what I see? They only have $5,000 left. $5,000 from $150,000. I asked them where the money went, and my father-in-law said he spent it on the construction project. He said that he bought the special sand that you need for electrical trenching, and then he showed me the special sand. But it was all just run-of-the-mill. Someone fleeced him for it, and he had paid $6,000 for a couple cubic yards of it. The steel pipe, he said, was for the horse farm, and he said he met a woman at the grocery store who wanted to board up her horses somewhere and agreed to do it with him. But his zoning does not allow horses. So I just asked my mother-in-law for the bank statements on the building account for the last couple of years. I start going through it, and he was using it like a debit card. He paid for his car insurance, trips to the liquor store, as he was always drinking ungodly amounts of alcohol, or even just buying donuts. I mean, he had spent all of it. My mother-in-law was furious, but I said, listen, you had access to this the whole time. You could have checked what he was doing. I later called my father-in-law and I chewed him out for spending all the money on useless garbage and for wasting my contractor's time. I said you spent the money for your home and now neither of you have anywhere to live. I was furious because this is a man that I care about and now he is effectively homeless, and my mother-in-law was now living in a one-bedroom apartment with her sister and her nephew. Well, he got mad, said none of that was true, and then stopped talking to us. He sent an email to everyone else in the family telling them that I'm a huge jerk amongst other things. He even reached out to my wife expecting her to take his side, but she didn't. At this point, he is now estranged to us. He still lives in the fifth wheel on the lot without any kind of electricity, and every November when it gets cold, he will call us or text us or email us saying that he's ready to finish the house now, but that he needs to borrow some money. I had to go up there to get some of my mother-in-law's stuff, and it looks like a complete mess. There's bottles and cans everywhere, there's garbage everywhere, tons of weather damage to the mobile home, all because it's not sealed and finished. There's piles of junk literally everywhere, and the Cadillac is up on blocks because he wrecked it, and he's trying to fix it himself. Oh, and remember the carpet and cabinets and the doors and everything else? Well, they were never installed, and now they're just rotting in the weather. My mother-in-law still lives with her sister and has no plans for her sister when she passes away because she is much older and sicker. She occasionally hints at moving in with us, but that is a non-starter for a million reasons. But this entire situation is absolutely baffling, and it all could have been avoided if they simply listened to us from the very beginning. Yeah, these people are very poor at planning their lives, because seriously, this all could have been avoided. They wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars just to be closer to someone when they could have just driven the 3 hours to see the family. Like, that is so crazy that they spent that much money for literally no reason. So yeah, your in-laws are not the smartest people in the world, because what they did to themselves was entirely preventable. My toxic entitled roommate is constantly trying to take over the house and set rules that nobody wants to follow, demanding that we listen to all of her rules all the time. But after dealing with this for so long, me and my roommates have banded together and have decided that if she doesn't straighten up her act, then we're going to get her evicted. Here's what happened. So I moved in July to a 5-people apartment in a small Spanish city, and it's one that's known for its university life. I'm a student, and so are the other 2 girls that arrived in August, while the other guy is working, and we're all in our 20s. The issue is the 5th roommate, an adult American woman in her 40s, and she moved in late August. We don't really know her age or her specific job, just that she's from California, but also she's been nothing but a nuisance. When I knew that we would be living with an adult woman, I worried that instead of trying to cohabitate, she would try to behave like the head of the household and try to impose her own rules. And so she does. When she wants something done, it has to be when she says so. She doesn't agree with chore division and hates our leniency with those, and has also been complaining nonstop about storage arrangements when there is plenty of space except for the fridges, which were a complete headache to administer. She also only speaks English and barely makes an effort to communicate in Spanish. Now, I'm fluent in English, but my other roommates are not, so that part of basic communication just doesn't work well. But what we all agree on is that she has been fixated on me for some reason. It started with fat-phobic remarks. She became super aggressive with me and would try to command my own storage space. Since I own loads of ingredients, I offered it for free if others would need it, but they refused, since they had their own storage chosen and divided. She said I couldn't use more than one cabinet, but the thing is, she uses 2 different cabinets. She also uses 2 bathrooms and doesn't follow her own chores. It's a common thing for her to say, oh, you have to follow the rules, but the rules don't apply to me. It then became a constant aggression with me, but I gray rocked while also losing my patience. Otherwise, my other roommates are sweet. They're responsible and respectful, and we always talk and agree on things, and no single problem has arisen between us that couldn't be fixed with a quick conversation. It came to a head while I was using the kitchen, and I was calmly cooking while listening to music in my headphones. I like to cook, and I always clean up after myself. She barged into the kitchen, accusing me of occupying loads of space, even though there's plenty of space. I mean, 3 people can cook at the same time in the kitchen. She then demanded that I stop spending time there, while also calling me a hog. Now, at this point, I lost my patience. I raised my voice and I laid it on her. I called her obnoxious and disrespectful, stating that she was demanding and unreasonable, that she's been nothing but a problem ever since she arrived, and I then forbade her from speaking to me until further notice. My other roommates heard the argument, and they sided with me, which further annoyed her. She then tried to establish new rules, like not using the kitchen beyond 6 o'clock p.m., as well as informing when visits are coming, or a mandatory common lunch each week. Well, the resounding no in unison clearly bothered her, and she then just shut herself in her room. Ever since then, she's been avoiding us, and we're all just doing the same. She barely comes out of her room and doesn't speak a word. Sometimes she says stupid stuff in the group chat, but she's just completely ignored or cut off. The agency that manages the flat is aware of the trouble, and we agree that if she persists after this period of silence, then she will be asked to leave. She's probably realized that she cannot force her will, and that we don't want to deal with her. As for now, she's not acknowledged me at all, so at least she's respecting my wishes. And I don't feel bad, because my other roommates and I are a united front. We know how to deal with her, and I just hope she reflects and chooses the best thing for her. Either stay and behave or just leave. Now, the other thing that really bothers us is that she's awake at night, so we hear her in the kitchen making noise at 4 or 5 in the morning. But she complains if we make noise during the morning or midday because she's asleep. She usually sends passive-aggressive messages at those hours, requesting chores to be done as soon as possible, but we just say that we will do those on our timetable. She's laughed at one of my roommates' accent, mocking how she speaks, and she tries to manipulate the other girls by giving them gifts, which are just old clothing that she leaves on the doors. And when something didn't go her way, she'll say, "Oh, I've been so good with you, I give you gifts." And trust me, there are many more than this, but I really hope that I don't have to deal with her for very long. Yeah, that's an obnoxious roommate. And on behalf of someone who is from America, I'm so sorry you have to deal with one of our worst. This lady sounds like an obnoxious jerk. First of all, you guys are not kids. You're all in your 20s, you're adults. So for her to walk in and be like, "Okay, it's my way or the highway," like that's just really weird, and there's no reason to act like that. Like, come on. But also, it is incredibly obnoxious that she's literally sitting there trying to make all these demands all the time. Because seriously, who made her queen of the castle? Just because she's older than everybody doesn't mean she has like seniority. That is not how this works. So truly, I hope she does get evicted, because this sounds like a miserable roommate. And if I was in your shoes, I would want her gone as soon as possible. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Today, I messed up by telling my boyfriend I wanted to break up just to try and win an argument. And now I really regret it, because I lost a man that I love very much. And at this point, I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I want to start off by saying that I already know I messed up big time, but I just want to get this out. For a little background, I'm a recovering alcoholic, and right now I'm 4 months sober. So I obviously had a problem, and I ended up getting really sick, and my boyfriend had to take me to the hospital. For the first week, he stayed with me every day, but eventually he had to go back to work, and I was pretty upset because I didn't want to be alone in the hospital, and we argued about it a lot. Then I found out after a few days that he had missed a week of work after he left the hospital. We had been texting, but he hadn't responded as much as usual, and his cousin had called me to ask if he was okay, and I didn't know that he had been missing work. So I called him, and he sounded bad, like really sick. He said he hadn't smoked cigarettes or the herb in over a week, and he hadn't been able to eat or drink anything without getting sick. I told him to go to the doctor, but he said we couldn't afford it since I was already sick in the ICU. Now, I was pretty worried, and he really did sound terrible. He lost his voice, and I could hear him puking over the phone, so I called an ambulance to our room. After a few more days, he had gotten better, and we were talking like everything was okay and I wasn't in the hospital, and he wasn't working 7 days a week up to 14 hours a day. He came and visited me on the weekends after work, and sometimes on the weekdays while he was having to work those, and I could tell he was always tired, but we argued a little because I didn't want him to leave me alone at the hospital all the time. Then he gets a letter from out of state from the CPS stating that his kids got taken from their mom months ago, and no one told him until then, and they wanted to give him custody of his his kids, who he had not seen in 2 years, and he was beyond excited. He got to talk to them for the first time in years, and he cried after he got off the phone telling me about it. Then came the big thing. He wanted to stay together, but wait for me to move back in until his court was over because I was an alcoholic, and I had current medical history and problems because of it. It caused a huge argument. I was so mad because he used to drink worse than me, to the point where he's throwing up uncontrollably and had the shakes when he quits drinking. I felt like it was unfair. I didn't want to not be with him when I got out of the hospital, even though he said he would visit me at my mom's or rehab. We fought about it every day for 2 weeks. He kept telling me to grow up and that his kids come first, and that if it was the other way around, he would do it no questions asked so that I could get my son. And you know what? He would have. I know that. He worked and took care of me for a year while I spent all his money and got sick. He even gave me sponge baths in the hospital and called my son so I could talk to him because he thought I was going to pass away. Like, I know I was beyond stupid, but I told him if I had to stay somewhere else, we were breaking up. It's always worked before when I wanted to get what I wanted, but this time he just said fine. He told me to do what I wanted then, and that I could be single since I'm always saying it, and he didn't have time to deal with this right now. And honestly, I didn't know what to say. I was mad. He always just let me have my way, and he probably shouldn't have. And now I just don't know what to say. The last thing he told me was that he's sorry and that he really loves me, but he couldn't do this right now, and he hopes that I stay sober. Now, it's been 4 months and I'm in sober living, but I don't have a job, and I haven't found a new place to stay. He still asks my mom about me, and he hasn't found anyone else. He has his kids back, and they're all doing good. And I really am hoping that he's doing good, and that his kids are safe now. I just wish I was there. I miss him, and I miss how he would always hold me when I didn't feel good, or how he made me dinner after he got home from work. I miss his kids, and I wish I could hug them all one more time. I miss how he would smile whenever I pulled his hair out of his face, or when I rubbed his chest. I want to talk to him so bad, but I have him blocked on everything because he told me to lose his number and that he didn't want to see me again after our last fight. He always told me that he's never felt like he did about me with anyone. He took me back after I left him for someone else for a year when his ex ran off with his kids. I messed up so much with him, and I never deserved how great he treated me. I've never had that before. Breakfast in bed when we didn't work, flowers whenever he got paid, presents just because he wanted to, watching my favorite shows I know he hated and pretending he loved them. I complained at him all the time about stupid stuff, and he always just stayed. He held me and rubbed my hair when I was so mad at him, and I even punched him and gave him a black eye. I just took it all for granted, thinking that he would always be there. I always thought that because he loved me, he would stay no matter what. I didn't deserve him. I tried to make him pick between me and his kids. Everyone in the world telling me how bad I messed up won't ever make me feel as bad as the look on his face when we broke up. Like it was the hardest choice he made. He always told me that the only things he wanted was a family, a house, and a wife that loved him. And I always wanted someone to be there no matter what, and he was doing that. I just got emotional and angry during my withdrawals, and I took it out on him. There were times I treated him so badly, and he just took it. And I'll never find someone like that ever again. I didn't deserve it the first time, and he deserved better. He told me he hopes I get better and that I do better in my next relationship, and that I find someone that treats me how I want to be treated. But who says that after someone breaks up with them? I just hope he finds someone that can be what he wants them to be and treats them as great as he treated me. I'm going through these steps and talking about all of it in a group, and didn't realize how selfish I was being. I just wish I could apologize and tell him how sorry I am, but that will not fix anything. I just have to try and get better and be better. He is the one person I can't talk to during step 9 because I do not deserve his forgiveness. Yeah, I'm just gonna say it straight up, you definitely messed up. It sounds like you have a really good guy that was willing to have your back, and you quite literally took that for granted. Like even saying the words, "I'm gonna break up with you if you don't do this or that," like that alone is so bad it's not even funny. And the fact that you did that more than once must have been like obnoxious for him. And I get it, you feel bad and you see what you did was wrong, but seriously, what you did really was wrong. And at least for the sake of his happiness, I really do hope that he doesn't have anybody like you in the future. And I mean that as nicely as I possibly can, because this story absolutely paints you in a bad light, and I hope that guy finds someone much better than what you gave him on a daily basis. Am I the jerk for telling my wife to take time off of work if she wants to take time for herself? Because right now she's angry with me for taking on a new job, despite the fact that we agreed that the pay increase would be worth it. And right now I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my wife and I have been married for 12 years and we have 2 kids. We both work full time, but I have got promoted about 3 months ago that required a change to my work hours. I used to have the same standard Monday through Friday hours as my wife, but my new role has me working 10-hour shifts Thursday through Sunday. This promotion came with a pretty substantial pay raise as well. My wife and I discussed how my change in hours would affect our family's day-to-day lives, but we both agreed it would be worth it for the additional income. I use my time off Monday through Wednesday to do pretty much all the family shopping, as well as doing errands, cleaning, and laundry, and I've even been able to make substantial progress on some long put-off home projects. I also cook dinners and prep weekly lunches for the kids and my wife. The additional income is becoming noticeable as well, as we haven't had this much in our savings account in years. A few weeks ago, my wife started griping about my new job. She hates that I'm working all weekend because that means that she's with the kids the entire time. She complains that she goes from working all week to solo parenting on the weekends. Both our kids are in activities on weekends, so she has been doing that by herself as well. We talked about ways to ease some of the weekend stuff from her, such as getting a babysitter, carpooling to kids' activities, taking the kids to their grandparents, and then some. But she still complains that all of the legwork for those things will be done by her, all because I'm at work. She said that she feels like she never has any time for herself since my hours got changed. To try and alleviate this, I suggested that she make plans with friends to do something on Monday or Tuesday nights, and she did try but got frustrated when her friends were busy those nights and wanted to get together on weekends. This led to another argument with her telling me that she hates my new job and that I need to look into changing my hours again. I told her that I've been trying everything to help ease the transition with my new job, but all I've been met with is hostility and frustration. I asked her if there's anything more I can do other than change my hours, and she told me no. She said she just hates that she doesn't get a break and that I have 3 days to myself. I started listing off all the ways I've been trying to make this easier and how much more money we are making, and she just cut me off and said to me that the money isn't worth it. I then got frustrated and I told her if she needs time for herself, then she should just use vacation time from work if she is not going to be reasonable and help me find a compromise. She then got even more mad and told me that I'm being a jerk. She then made me sleep in the guest room and told me that I can't come back to our bed unless I fix this. What should I do? Okay, in my opinion, I think I can see both sides of this, but I really have to side with the original poster here. From the sounds of it, it seems like this is a substantial increase in pay, and if they just find some kind of routine to make this work, this could be very advantageous for the both of them and their entire family. So to that end, I don't think the original poster is the jerk. And sure, things are really hard right now, and I can understand that she's like completely overwhelmed, but it really seems like she is unwilling to have any kind of compromise, and she is just refusing to listen to any other like alternative solution. And it's not like the guy can change his hours. Like seriously, he just got this job. If he was like a year in, he could probably switch things up and work during the week. Like that probably would be ideal, but he literally just started it. He can't change that around even if he wanted to. So in my opinion, I do not think that you're the jerk. Am I the jerk for asking my dad to not bring his girlfriend to a football game after he has completely neglected any kind of one-on-one time between the two of us ever since he started dating her? Here's what happened. I'm a 25-year-old female and I'm an only child. My parents divorced 4 years ago, and I've always had a good relationship with my dad, though sometimes it's been a bit rocky. We've had a tradition going out to dinner every Friday, and I've always tried to maintain a close bond with him. In 2021, I befriended a lady by the name of June, who is a colleague of mine, and for reference, June is 45 years old. We weren't super close, but I considered her more than just a work friend. We had hung out, and at one point, I even asked her to lend me her credit card to buy us Lollapalooza tickets. In return, she asked to visit my family's island house, which I agreed to. I didn't think much of it when I later invited her and her daughter to the house with my dad driving us there. Well, it turns out my dad and June started dating shortly afterwards. They did ask for my permission at first, and I reluctantly said yes. But over time, I began to feel sidelined. June started coming to all of our outings, even to the point where my dad wanted to include her and her kids on our annual New Year's trip. Whenever I wanted to hang out with my dad alone, he would suggest that I tag along with them instead. By October, I had enough, and I told him how uncomfortable I felt. His response was that they were a couple now, and I needed to accept that they would always do things together. I wasn't asking him to choose between us, but instead just to have any kind of time alone with him. Fast forward to last Wednesday, and my dad called asking if he could bring June to our local football club game, which is something that's been a special tradition for us ever since I was a kid. Well, I said no, reminding him that this was supposed to be our thing. He pushed back, saying that he didn't want her to be alone on a Saturday night, but I told him again that my answer was still no. He then called me spoiled and bratty and said to me that he was bringing her anyways. friends. But you know what? I stood my ground, saying that he could go with her, but don't pick me up. He then suggested that we could all have dinner afterwards, to which I said I'd rather go with one of my friends. He then proposed that we all go together, and I said no again. He finally said, okay, but I'm bringing her either way. Then, 5 minutes later, he called back saying, you know what, I'm not going. And since then, we haven't spoken. I tried calling on Friday to cancel our usual dinner plans, but he did not respond. He's currently living with June while she builds her new house, so they get to see each other every day. So is it too much to ask for him to go to the game with just me? Is it really such a tragedy for her to stay home for a couple of hours? Am I the jerk for wanting that one-on-one time with my dad? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk here. I think what you're asking is completely reasonable because your dad is seemingly finding every excuse under the sun to not spend any time with you. And I'm sure that you're happy that he is actually with June and they get to spend time together, but it seems like he's going overboard and just completely neglecting any kind of relationship with you. So on that end, I understand where you're coming from, and I can see why you're getting frustrated about everything going on. So overall, I don't think you're the jerk, and I think that your dad should do a better job of trying to reach out to you. I'm considering quitting my job as a restaurant server every single day, simply because it is one of the worst working environments I've ever experienced in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so admittedly, I've only been serving in a restaurant for about a month, but out of all the jobs I've held, this one stresses me out the most. When I began, I only had 2 days of training before I was thrown onto the floor. The first couple of weeks were fairly rough, as I was acclimating to the pace and learning a lot of things on the fly. I dealt with extremely rude and entitled customers along the way, unlike any other retail job that I've picked up. One lady kept repeating that it was her birthday and said, "No tip, there's no tip," and actually ripped her check in half in front of me and the manager, all because I took a little too long from being green. But joke's on her because it was auto gratuity anyways. But ever since the first couple of weeks, I've dealt with a much lower amount of rude customers, probably partly because I've gotten much better and gotten the hang of things. Aside from that, I've quickly discovered that a lot of my coworkers seem fairly toxic. Most of them don't greet you, even when I smile and initiate first. Lots of gossiping amongst the girls, and plenty of private, personal things shared within earshot very often. I mean, people talk so much garbage. One of the chefs was very verbally awful to the servers as well when mistakes were made, no matter how small they might be. Since I was new to serving and made a number of mistakes out of pure ignorance, he decided to target me. Other servers told me it was normal and I should just tolerate it, but he was the only one doing that. He started out with scolding and ramped up to insults with me, but as soon as it got to that point, I had enough and basically said that we're gonna fight outside of work. And ever since then, he's been much quieter and much more cooperative with every one of the servers. But you know what? I shouldn't have to do that. I shouldn't have to warn another human being that treating others beneath them is wrong and that there are going to be consequences. I've also never dealt with this much toxicity within such a short period of time. It usually takes longer to unfold, but I guess the stressful environment accelerates that. I truly didn't understand why there were so many messed up people in the food industry until now. I started this because I wanted to work my way up to bartending, but my God, I'm considering rage quitting every single day that I work. Yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from because I've dealt with every single one of those when I was working in the restaurant business. People are super toxic, they don't like working there, and you just happen to be the next person that they get to yell at because they hate their life. Like, that's been my experience, and sure, other people have great experiences working in restaurants, but I don't think I've ever had a good experience being a server, a busboy, or anything. So yeah, that kind of is what you're getting into, and I don't blame you for wanting to quit. Because unless you have a good staff and a good manager to keep things on track, then that job truly can be very miserable. An entitled Karen claims that the entire park belongs to her, which according to her, gives her the right to let her dog run around and nearly bite me and my dog. Things got so bad that I ended up calling the police and reporting this lady for being absolutely insane. And now I really hope I never have to deal with her ever again. Here's what happened. So this happened to me earlier this morning. I just moved to a new city less than a month ago and have been checking out the parks where dogs are required to be on leash. Now I have an older dog that's a little terrier, and he's been attacked in the past by larger dogs, so random dogs running up to him off leash really freaks him out. It also makes me a bit nervous because I was also attacked as a kid by a dog. I was bit in the face and I almost lost a cheek, and I had to have reconstructive surgery. But by and large, I love animals, especially dogs, because 9 times out of 10, a dog's bad behavior is because of the owner, so I don't blame the dog. So at a new on-leash park this morning, things are going fine until my dog and I walk over a rise and further down the trail about 25 yards, where I see this lady who has 2 dogs who are both off their leash. The little wiener dog is going nowhere fast, but the German Shepherd sees me and my dog and immediately bolts for us barking. I picked up my terrier and I get him lifted over my head by the time the German Shepherd reaches us. I've learned over the last 5 years of having him that this is the easier way to keep him calm. Her dog is now right there. It's growling and trying to jump up and get at my dog. I loudly told the woman to call off her dog and she just stands there watching. Her dog makes another jumping lunge for mine, so I use my legs to push it away and I yell that she needs to call off her dog. Well, this apparently pisses her off because she just completely lost it on me. This woman starts screaming at me, calling me a jerk, and told me to get out of her park and to stop kicking her dog. Now, for the record, I'm not kicking the dog. I'm just using my legs to deflect her dog each time he tries to jump up at my dog that, by the way, I still have held over my head. I yelled at her again, call off your dog. If it bites, I will call the police. She called her dog off then, but it took a few attempts before it stopped. And at no point did this woman even move from where she was. She just stood there until her dog finally responded to her command and went back to her. As soon as she had him by the collar, she started cussing me out again, telling me to get out of her park. I then took off back to the parking area with my dog and I got him in the car. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, is it finally over? But no, this woman also comes into the parking area and starts loading her dogs into her car while continuing to scream at me how I've just completely ruined her day, reiterating that it's her park and that she can do whatever she wants. And she peppered in several swear words throughout her entire tirade. I took the opportunity to snap a picture of her and her license plate and Google the local non-emergency line and dial. This makes her then visibly angry and she looks like she's gonna start coming across the parking area towards me until I start talking into the phone about how I'd like to make a report about an aggressive dog and a woman in the park. The entitled woman then proceeds to get into her car and leave in a hurry at that point, still cursing and swearing at me, which definitely helped confirm the validity of my call. Now, just to add in, I decided to call the non-emergency line because while her dog didn't bite me, her utter lack of concern and her behavior, coupled with her dog being aggressive, makes me worried that this won't be an isolated issue. The park in question has a large play area for children near the parking lot, and I would hate for this woman's entitlement to result in a child or someone else and their dog being harmed by her lack of desire to follow the clearly posted rules to keep the dogs on a leash. Now, I don't like the stereotype, but this woman is the epitome of entitled Karens. She was in her late 50s, she was white, she had that haircut, and she was driving a new green Kia Sport. But this Karen either needs to get back on her meds or start taking some, because the absolute conviction she kept screaming about the park being hers was completely off the charts. Yeah, that Karen was absolutely crazy. There's no way in the world that park belonged to her, and the fact that she wasn't calling off her dog right away was insane in my opinion. Like, what was she thinking? She clearly has a dog that's not well trained or has any kind of, I don't know, discipline in its life, and she's clearly not a good owner because the dog didn't come back right away. But also, that's a German Shepherd. They use those dogs for police dogs. Like, come on, man. She's got to be a better owner than just letting it run around and do whatever it wants. Like, the original poster had to hold their dog over their head just to avoid the German Shepherd. That's insane in my opinion, and honestly, there's just no good excuse. So hopefully this lady gets in trouble in some kind of way because her behavior was completely unhinged. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not paying for a road that my neighbors were trying to build next to my land? Because even though they tried to say that I would pay for 1/3 of it, I put my foot down and I told them that no, I'm not going to pay for it, causing them to get upset and call me selfish and greedy. Here's what happened. Okay, so here's the thing. A developer in our area went bust, and plots of land behind and next to my land were for sale for a pretty good price. So suddenly, I had new potential neighbors. One day, a guy appeared on my land, introduced himself, and told me that he had bought the land behind me, and asked if I would agree to allow them to build a road on the border of my land. As the person who owns the land next to me don't want to go in the middle of his land, but he would agree to have it on the border of our two lands, as he could also use the same road as his driveway. So I agreed, and I told him sure, but the only condition is that I can also use the road if I need to access that side of my land for whatever reason. So he has to do all the paperwork, and when everything is ready, we can make it official. We exchanged contacts and everything seemed to be great. A few days ago, I got an email with an attachment and with plans and everything else, and the cost for all of this was divided to 3, assuming that everyone, including me, would pay 1/3 of the cost. The future neighbor next to me replied that he would only cover part of the cost of what he would use, as he would only use about half of it. Well, I replied to his email by saying something like, "I'm really sorry if there was a misunderstanding, but I will not be paying for the road because I don't need that road. I will allow you to build a road with my only condition being that I get to use it if I need to. do? Well, this guy called me up and he was very mad at me, stating that I was selfish and greedy and that I expected to use something that others built and it would be so expensive for him. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. These people want to build their roads and they asked for permission and you said yes. Like in no part of that conversation did it ever include you having to pay for a single thing. Because if that was the case, then they honestly should have brought that up in the beginning. Like it's very dishonest for him to be like, okay, here's everything you need. And then suddenly you're finding out, oh wow, you're paying for a third of this road. Like, no, I didn't agree to that. I'm definitely not going to do that. Your gift to them was allowing them to make the road in the first place, not be responsible for it by having to pay for a single cent, especially because it's not on your property. So no, if anything, your neighbor is definitely the jerk, because it really seems like he was trying to pull a fast one. Am I the jerk for not inviting my half-siblings to my wedding, who I have literally not seen in over 20 years? Because right now my dad is calling me selfish, and at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my fiance and I are having a small wedding with only about 40 people attending, but with everybody who would be going, I did not invite my 3 half-siblings who live in another country on the guest list. I have never met one of them, and it's been over 20 years since I saw the other 2. At a meeting with my parents and in-laws to discuss the wedding, my father said that one of my brothers will be in my home country and that I should invite him to the wedding. I told him that my fiance and I did not include any of my half-siblings in the guest count, as we wanted to have a small and intimate wedding with people close to us. My dad then said that he was disappointed that I didn't at least invite my brother, who would be in the country at the time of the wedding. I told him, I'm sorry, but if I invite them, I'd have to invite their spouses and possibly their children. That's an additional cost for 8 people to an already tight wedding budget. Also, I wasn't invited to the weddings of my 2 married siblings, so I really didn't think that it would be a big deal. Well, when I said that, my dad got upset and said that if money was the issue, why didn't my fiance and I accept his offer to assist with wedding cost? He said that I was being selfish and that we are still family even though we didn't grow up together. So am I the jerk for not inviting them to my wedding? Because right now I really don't know what to do. No, I definitely don't think you're the jerk, because you know what? This is your wedding day. You and your fiance decide who you want there and literally nobody else. You haven't talked to these people in what, 20 years? And suddenly your dad's like, oh, you've got to invite them. You have to have them involved in your wedding. And like you pretty much said it best. Why should they be involved in your wedding when you weren't involved in theirs? That literally makes no sense, and there's no reason for you to reciprocate something you never got in the first place. So if you don't want them at your wedding, then that is honestly the end of it. Because trying to force something like that, especially on such a special day, in my opinion, is incredibly inappropriate. An entitled lady screams at me at a stoplight, demanding that I change the color of my Ford Ranger simply because our cars had matching paint jobs, and she said that I was copying her. And I'm honestly still confused by this interaction, because the way this lady was acting was truly insane. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened at a stoplight a couple weeks ago, and it still makes me giggle. I drive a 2019 Ford Ranger in a color called Hot Chili Pepper Red. It's an orange and red color that turns out to be a candy coat of orange over red. It's one of their expensive upgrade colors that's pretty rare because nobody wants to pay an extra $750 for it. And as a side note, I didn't either. I just got a deal on the truck. I happened to pull up next to a new Bronco in the same color, and the lady driving was pretty excited. But it turns out her excitement was extremely pissed off because my truck was the same color as hers. According to her, it was a limited edition color that was exclusive to a certain package in the Bronco that year, and she said that I was copying her. She accused me of painting my truck to copy her car and actually demanded that I change it back. And she said this in a really screeching, high-pitched voice. Now, all of this was happening at a stoplight, and I just sat there watching this grown adult lose her ever-loving mind over the color of our cars. And it only later occurred to me that I really should have recorded the interaction. Now, given that there's around 10 to 12 different factory colors in a maker's entire lineup, I'm not sure how she thought that this was a color unique to her. I know the higher-end badges like Porsche will make a custom color for you, but this is Ford, the company that once offered cars in any color you like as long as it's black. So I feel like she's gonna have a lot of problems in life, because the way she reacted to my car being the same color as hers, honestly, is very weird. Yeah, that's a really strange thing to be upset about, because seriously, what is she mad over? People can have the same colored cars as somebody else, like that is not that unusual. And for her to jump to the assumption that, oh yeah, you're copying her and you need to change it back right now. And it makes me think like, what, like right now? Like in the middle of this stoplight right now? Or like, when do you want me to do that? So truly, I think some people are just born to try and complain about something in front of them. And this lady absolutely fits that description. Entitled bike riders in my city are making our lives a living nightmare by literally forcing people to walk on the grass as they have completely taken over the sidewalk. Here's what happened. I live near a busy street, and it does have a bike lane which seldom gets used. Bicyclists just use the sidewalk, and they will regularly run people onto the grass, Basically, if you're not using a bike, you're forced to walk in the grass next to the sidewalk, since the cyclists basically feel like it's theirs. Well, I was walking to work and a bike rider decided that I wasn't moving fast enough. He then called me 2 names. He called me a fat pig and piggy. And you know what? I was really self-conscious most of the day because you kind of get to know locals and I could get a customer complaint. So I was upset and I wanted to call in sick because what if he shops at my store? I don't want my managers to know that I was being picked on just for my weight and size. This is such a common occurrence and I don't want to be seen as entitled, but I might have to just walk in the bike lane since it might be safer. And I think that I might be entitled since I wasn't moving fast enough and I was in the way. I just feel like maybe I shouldn't be commuting like this and I don't want to quit my job and go somewhere further away. I wish there was some kind of alternative route. So am I entitled for thinking I could use the sidewalk or should I just use the bike lane? I mean, literally, no one uses the bike lane. Are the bike riders being entitled for forcing people to walk on the grass? I'm honestly just so scared of getting hit by cars. And at this point, I really don't know what to do. No, you're definitely not entitled and you're definitely not the jerk. The sidewalk is definitely meant for people to walk on, and the fact that these bike riders are literally making people walk in the grass, in my opinion, is so inappropriate. And you know what? Next time someone says that to you, you shouldn't feel bad about yourself in the slightest. You did literally nothing wrong because they're the ones with a problem, not you. You're just minding your own business trying to get to work. And I know if I was in your shoes and someone called me a fat pig or piggy, I would be saying something back right away, like that is not gonna fly in my book for a second. You can't just disrespect someone like that, especially when that person literally didn't do anything wrong. So no, in my opinion, I think you should absolutely continue to walk on the sidewalk to work because that's literally where you're supposed to be. And if these bike riders don't like that, then they can go back to the bike lane, which is exactly where they're supposed to be in the first place. An entitled coworker gets exposed for not being an actual engineer after he freaks out on another coworker. And I'm honestly still baffled that this guy got hired in the first place, and I'm really glad that this guy ended up getting fired. Here's what happened. So this happened at work last year and I wanted to share it. So I work for a big tech company as a building maintenance tech. I do repairs, handle contracts, move office furniture, all sorts of things. But most of my coworkers are tech types with engineering degrees. Some of them are nice, down-to-earth kind of people, but many of them let their importance get to their heads. And the guy that I'm about to describe absolutely takes the cake. So we had a very, very nice desk set aside in an empty office. It was meant to be moved into the office of one of our bigwigs, but she was out of town for a few months, so we were storing it until we had her input on what she wanted removed to make room for it. Well, this low-level new hire engineer decided to set up shop in the spare room that we were keeping the desk in. He was told that as long as his supervisor was okay with it, he could stay, but that we would be coming to get the desk any day and to please not get attached. Well, the day comes to move the desk, and this guy lost his mind. He was pissed off, yelling that he deserved that desk. He was an engineer, and how dare we? My team just kind of shrugged and took the desk anyways, so he turned his rage onto the poor front desk guy for some reason and just went off. Well, the front desk guy doesn't take crap from anyone, and got this guy's supervisor and HR involved, which opened up an investigation into Mr. Big Shot Engineer himself. And you know what they found? He lied on his resume. He was in no way qualified for his position. I guess a fresh set of eyes saw some kind of red flag that the hiring manager hadn't. So yeah, he was promptly fired. And it's amazing that he almost got away with it and decided to blow up over a stupid desk that he definitely did not deserve. Okay, this story is crazy to me because how do you get a job as an engineer if you're not an engineer? That hiring manager sucks at their job. Like, holy crap, that is crazy to me. Like, sure, the way he reacted after having the desk taken away and him bragging about being an engineer was all like really kind of weird as it is. But the fact that he even got hired in the first place is like blowing my mind right now. So yeah, his attitude was very wrong, and it's probably a really good thing that he ended up getting fired. An entitled Karen gets her iPad stolen and then decides that it should be everybody else's problem, as she had a meltdown in a way that I've never seen before in my life. Here's what happened. So I work as an administrator in an elementary school, and last Monday morning, a very agitated coworker came asking for help. Apparently, someone broke into a mother's car and stole her iPad while she was dropping her kids off, and that's really bad. Only I have access to the surveillance footage, so of course I agreed to help. I only need to know which car it was and where it was parked. So we both went out to look for the mom so that we could ask her for this information. And when we find her, she was yelling at a group of teachers, demanding to see the camera footage and saying that she knew this school was horrible and just full of thieves. She was so upset she didn't want to talk to me and just left in a rage. And to be perfectly honest, I thought this was very understandable. I went over to her kid's teacher to ask exactly how it happened, and then everything turned really awkward. Apparently, the mom's car wasn't in our parking lot lot when it happened, and she decided to leave it on the street so that she could save time. She also left her car unlocked, and the iPad itself was in the passenger seat in a bright pink case. And to top it all off, she never activated the Find Me feature on the iPad. Now, because this wasn't in the school grounds, there was no clear camera footage. The best that I could find was her car in the distance with passing traffic blocking the view. I watched the whole 10 minutes, starting from where they got off the car to when she realized the iPad wasn't there anymore and came storming back. I saw several people pass by during that time, but at no point could the actual theft be seen in the first place. I did notice a blurry man take a longer time than everyone else walking by her car, so we pointed this out when we sent her the footage. Well, the mom was pissed. She said the footage was useless since she couldn't even see who the man was or where he was heading, but sadly there was nothing else that we could do. She then threw a big fuss and even put a bad Google review claiming that this school covers up for thieves, and apparently she wanted us to pay for the damages. Thankfully, it's been a week now and she has finally calmed down, but I'm just baffled at the entitlement of wanting everyone else to pay for her ridiculous mistakes. Yeah, that's such a weird way to act because literally that is nobody's fault except for hers. She left her car on the street and she's the one that let it basically get stolen out of her car. Like, how's that the school's fault? She's a complete moron for being like, oh, you're trying to cover up for thieves. And it's like, okay, but if you didn't have your iPad in a pink cover on your passenger seat, then maybe someone wouldn't have stolen it. Like, she literally put a target on her back and then tried to blame everybody else for it. Like, that's so weird, it's not even funny. So yeah, that lady was completely out of line and her attitude was completely unacceptable. An entitled Karen expects me to organize and basically pay for her entire charity that she's trying to run, claiming that because I already do this pretty much on a regular basis, I should be good to do it for her as well. And I'm honestly still blown away by her entitlement. Here's what happened. Okay, so years ago, I taught Zumba classes. When there was a tragedy or someone was in need, often a bunch of instructors from around town would get together and do a Zumbathon to raise money. I used to co-teach at a church and the classes were very well attended, like 2 classes per night, twice a week, with roughly 150 people per class. Every once in a while, the church would ask us to do a fundraiser, and we usually just announced ahead of time that we were donating that night's receipts to the church in case people wanted to contribute anything extra. Now, one woman called me because she was part of a walkathon or something like that, where you put a team together and the team raises money together to donate to the overall cause. She wanted me to donate the money that we earn from a regular class to give to her for her charity. Now, I explained that we were happy to do fundraisers for groups, but they would have to provide the venue and participate. We would promote their events in our classes and teach for free, but it was their event. Well, when I said that, she didn't like this at all. She figured since we do it for the church that hosted our classes, we should just do it for her too. I then pointed out to her that this was my job, and this is how I earn money to eat and pay my bills. She knew my co-instructor was a teacher, so she said that she talked to her since she had another job. I asked her if she had already asked everyone else that she knew to donate a day's wage to her cause, and she was not happy with me after I said that. And it honestly still astounds me that this person decided that the way to donate to her cause was to literally make someone else do all the work and sacrifice all of their time. Yeah, that lady was being super selfish and very entitled. The second you said this is your job should have been her cue to be like, oh, I'm so sorry, let me figure out a different venue or like a different option for my thing going on. The fact that she expected you to basically work for free and give your money to somebody else while also basically expecting you to organize the entire event was super entitled and so uncalled for. It also shows that she was not serious and just super lazy. She quite literally wanted you to do all the work. She wanted you to find a venue, to find pretty much everything that she would need, and it all came from such a place of like, oh, well, you're already doing this, so why don't you do this for me? And you know what? Now that I think about it, I'm even doubting if they were a charity in the first place. It kind of seems like they just saw a good way to make money fast, and they probably thought, oh yeah, these people will do it for me, I can take the money and run. But I really love your response to this lady, because it not only proved your point, but it also brought this idiot back to planet Earth. When you said to her, oh, did you ask someone else to give up their day's wage for your stupid cause? And of course she's not going to be happy about that, because that's basically what she was asking. She was asking you to give up your money to her without her doing any work. And that, in my opinion, is completely unfair and super ridiculous. An entitled Karen demands that I break the rules at my job just so she can get her way with her and her stupid kids. Things got so bad that this entitled Karen literally threatened to get me in trouble, as well as write a bad review about me, all because I was doing my job. Here's what happened. So I work in what is essentially a huge play place for children. There are no age restrictions except for one single room, which is limited to children under the age of 3. It also requires them to be supervised by a member of their group age 16 or older, because we are just there to facilitate play and make sure everyone is being safe. We are not babysitters. visitors. Everyone, the staff included, is required to have their shoes off when they're in the room. We don't want any dirt or mud or anything being tracked into the room where lots of little kids are crawling around on the floor. Now, we deal with people being mildly annoyed over these rules on a pretty much regular basis, but typically they don't make a big thing out of it. Recently, a mom came up to the little entrance gate to the room with her 2 kids. One was younger than 3, and the other was very obviously at least 5 or 6 years old. Before I can even say hello, she is telling me and not asking me that her 5 or 6-year-old will be coming into the room regardless of the rules because she doesn't have anyone else who can watch him, and her younger child really wants to come in. Now, I politely attempted to explain that I cannot allow that, since we take the age rule very seriously due to past issues, and we can get written up for allowing bigger kids into the room. Well, this entitled Karen makes a huge show of groaning and rolling her eyes at me, and then tells the other child that he can go play somewhere else, while she and the other kid under 3 years old comes and plays in the room. Well, this required me to tell her that she cannot have her kids off on their own without her also present. And when I said this, she absolutely lost her mind on me. She said to me, "Every time we come here, I've always been allowed to bring my older child in here with me. No one's ever told us that was a rule before." And she went on and on. I explained to her that if that was true, then my coworkers have made a mistake, and I was fully expected to maintain the age limits on the room. She then gets angrier and angrier and ends up goading her youngest into a full-on crying meltdown by telling him, "This person is saying that you don't get to have fun. If he's not allowing us in, then we have to go straight home because I can't deal with both of you." It all wrapped up with both her kids crying as they're being shoved back into the stroller, and the mom storming off, swearing that she was going straight to our admissions desk to report me, and then she was going home to write a review. I asked around later, and I found out that she did go to the front desk to complain, and was apparently utterly livid when she was told that yes, it sounds like our employees did their job, as that room is exclusively for kids 3 years of age and under, and we do require that kids stay with their adults. But unfortunately, she still hasn't left a review though, as I was really looking forward to seeing my name mentioned in the post. Wow, you have to be seriously entitled to act like that in front of your kids. She not only worked those kids up to start crying as some kind of like manipulation tactic, in some desperate attempt that you'll give in to her weird demands. Because seriously, she was completely out of line. The fact that she wanted to bend and break the rules, in my opinion, shows that she's not a good mom, and she's just super disrespectful of those around her. And I just love the fact that she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you in trouble, I'm gonna leave a review, and I'm going to complain." But it's like, lady, the original poster literally did their job. They're trying to keep people safe and not get in trouble themselves. And it's also really good that the admissions desk was like, yeah, they did their job. Because I've worked in places where that doesn't happen, where they turn it right back on the employee themselves, and you basically get thrown under the bus for doing your job. So truly, I'm so glad that things worked out for you, and hopefully that lady never comes back ever again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled jerk makes my coworker cry after he freaks out when he realized he missed a promotion that we were having. So I decided to step in and take over, putting this jerk in his place in a way that he will never forget. Here's what happened. Okay, so this situation happened quite a while ago. I'm working at a small mom and pop hardware store, and it was about 5 minutes before closing, and I was going through the closing routine of the store. But it's right as I'm doing that I hear what's going on in the distance. I hear someone scream, "What do you mean they're not answering?" Now, turning the corner is when I see a larger man yelling at the sales clerk. And this young lady was literally bawling her eyes out. So I walk up to my coworker, I get her attention, and I tell her to go ahead and clock out for the evening as I'm going to take care of this. Well, when I did this rude customer started screaming at me. He said to me, "Hey, where do you think she's going? I'm not done with her." But I responded by saying, "Yes, you are done with her. I'm taking over from here." The rude customer then says, "Oh, you're taking over, are you? What are you going to do about it?" And I just respond by saying, "Absolutely nothing. The credit card special promotion that you're complaining about is over." This customer then freaks out. He says to me, "What? No way, you piece of garbage. It says right here that you have until 5 o'clock p.m. I then say to him, "Yeah, in Eastern Standard Time. And we happen to be in Pacific Time. The credit card company's office that processes applications has been closed for 3 hours. And as a side note, I even had to explain to him what Eastern Standard Time meant. This rude guy then says to me, "So what are you going to do to fix this then?" I responded by saying, "Well, I told you I'm not going to do anything. What do you want me to do? Call an employee of that office to tell them to go back and process your application? If you think we're going to do that, then you've got to be kidding yourself. We are a hardware store, not a credit card processing company." This rude customer then says that he's not leaving until this is fixed. He goes on to say, "This is a public space. I have every right to be here. But I looked at him and said, yes, you are leaving as we are closing. And it was at this moment that my coworker walks by with her stuff to go home, and this rude customer decides to go back in on her. He says to her, hey, you little jerk, you really messed up. But I reminded him, hey, you're talking to me, not to her. And don't you dare talk to her like that. And as for a public space, that's the street. The sidewalk inside this building is private, meaning that we reserve the right to refuse business. Now get out because we're closed. And before this guy could even finish his next sentence, I said to him, if you don't, there's a police station right across the street, and they'll be here in under a minute to trespass you and escort you out the building. So what's it gonna be? This guy then looked at me incredibly angry and said to me, fine, I'm going, but I'm never shopping here ever again. And when he said that, I just smiled and waved at him. I said to him, okay, you have a good day, sir. A little later that evening, I call my coworker to see how she's doing, and thankfully she's doing just fine. She just needed a few minutes away from that guy, and I assure her that he will never come back to that store. I will ask him to leave and for her to not talk to him, and thankfully we haven't had any problems ever since. Okay, that guy's a complete moron because why would he act that way? I can't stand when customers come in and take it out on employees when special deals or special offers somehow expired without them knowing. Like, buddy, I am not the reason that expired, and I'm definitely not the person who put up that special in the first place. I'm just a worker literally trying to make rent. Like, what's your problem? And it's so telling that this guy's a massive coward because he would rather talk to the young lady that he made cry than someone who actually knew what they were doing and wasn't gonna take that crap. Not to mention the fact that he tried to take one last shot at her and be like, oh wow, you messed up big time, this is your fault. But it's like, no buddy, this is your fault. You're the reason this all fell apart. So good for you for having your coworkers back, because this jerk absolutely needed to be put in his place. My entitled lazy sister refuses to take care of her dog and is constantly leaving me and my mom with the responsibility of taking care of a pet that she said she would care for. And I'm honestly so annoyed by this behavior that I seriously don't know what to do. So my sister is 25, but she still acts like she's 13. She assumes things will go her way and won't take responsibility when it backfires. You know that when she asks dad to go for a movie or eat out, she will try to get dad to pay for her meal or ticket, even if it was her idea. One time I asked which car I can drive, and my parents said that I should drive our Toyota. Well, she got mad at me when I took the car because apparently this car had a sticker going to an area that needs that sticker, and without that sticker you have to take a longer route to get where you're going, and apparently my father is supposed to tell me that I should ask all my siblings who's using the car before trying to use it myself. But the thing is that she did not ask my parents if she can use the car, and she never told my parents about the party she was planning to attend, which is what this is all about. She just assumed that people will ask her, and lo and behold, it all backfired, but she still doesn't see it as her fault. Well, last year my sister got a dog, and in my house we had 4 dogs, 3 toy poodles and 1 male Labrador. My dad did something for a friend, and the friend was super grateful, and in return he offered to give my family a dog, and my sister really wanted this female poodle. So now it's 5 dogs in the house. The thing is that my sister can now apparently have her dog breed with another poodle and make money from the breeding program. The dog was only 8 months old when we got her, but the problem is that my sister is a very poor owner and handler. She still goes out with her friends, and she assumes me and my brother can watch the dog. The dog almost broke my laptop by putting its paw on the screen and bringing it down, but my sister said, oh, you shouldn't have used it there. One time my parents went out one weekend because my dad's cousin had passed away, and my sister left for a party and did not tell me or my brother about babysitting her dog. She just assumed that I will sleep in my parents' room and will watch the Labrador and her dog in there. But you know what? I just left. And as a result, the poodle peed on my mom's carpet, and my brother sent a photo to my mom. My mom then got so mad at my sister and tried to talk it out when she returned from the funeral, but my sister just walked away from her, and it really pissed my mom off. Now, what I hate so much is that she goes out with friends and stays with them until 2 o'clock in the morning, but she also has this dog that she needs to take care of. And I did tell her that she can hang out with friends and her boyfriend, but can only do it for maybe a maximum of 3 hours. Like, I'm sorry, but your dog needs to be taken care of. But she still does not listen. She doesn't bother to get her dog outside or in mom's room when she returns. Well, the dog last month went into heat, and it was a long weekend in my country. My sister decided to go out for 4 days with her friends, and I did not know this until the day itself. In fact, I only knew when she left. So she just left and never told us how to handle her dog. In contrast, when my mom went out, she would tell the kids what to do if the dog got sick or anything like that. But with my sister, we got nothing. It was really hard controlling her heated dog while the Labrador was going crazy. I mean, my sister wasn't there, and my mom did not understand why she made her trip with her friends so long. It easily could have been 1 day only, but my sister went for 3 nights. And that is when my mom decided to have the dog neutered. She told my sister about it, but my sister said no. But my mom continued with the plan. Well, fast forward, and the female poodle got neutered last Friday. And when that happened, my sister went berserk on my mom and lashed out. The argument lasted for 2 hours, and my sister cried in her room for another 2 hours. She wanted that breeding program to happen, but my mom neutered her dog due to her being a lazy owner. My sister thinks that my mom doesn't want her to see her friends, but all my mom was trying to say is to minimize time with them because she has a dog to train. Anyways, I'm glad it happened to my sister because she is incredibly lazy. Okay, honestly, I think your mom made the best decision for that dog possible. Your sister is a lousy pet owner, and in my opinion, people like her should not be allowed to have pets. It is so inconsiderate that that dog is literally left by itself, and then you and your mom and the rest of your family is somehow expected to pick up the slack when you did not sign up for that. Like at that point, just give the dog back to the friend and be like, sorry, we can't take care of it. So hopefully your sister can grow up and do better as a person, because this kind of behavior is incredibly immature. Entitled customers made my time in customer service an absolute nightmare, and I'm seriously so glad I will never have to deal with these people ever again. So I've worked in customer service in some form for over a decade, and without fault, there's always the niche customer, the one who wants their order, their purchase, their whatever in a very specific manner. The weirdest were always in food service, and it is always the most left field request. If you get it right, they are always sweet as pie, kind as you could ever be. But if you get it wrong, then you definitely are in for it. Now, both of these stories are from my teenage years, so they are pretty old. When I was 16 years old, I worked at a fast food restaurant that is quite famous for its frozen treats. And through that job, there are 2 customers that still stick with me. The first was a man who I dealt with at least once a week in the drive-thru. He always ordered some kind of meal combo and a frozen dessert. He would order his meal by number and would order his frozen dessert, and as he left the speaker, in no more than a regular speaking voice, he would say to put the dessert in a bag. Now, the only bags we had were paper, and they're meant for burgers and fries and so on. They're not meant, however, for the sauce-covered meltable desserts. The lids that fit any given frozen treat were subpar at best, and after maybe 5 minutes, you would have ice cream leaking out the sides and a lovely chilled soup waiting for you. And I knew from seeing this customer every week for years that he would pick this up as his lunch before he would drive 45 minutes to an hour into the city for his evening shift at whatever job he worked at. But if you forgot the bag, no matter how kind and how sweet and apologetic, this guy would still freak out. I mean, God forbid he put the dessert in his own bag himself. I mean, this guy would be livid if you didn't do this for him. I remember this very prominent purple vein would bulge in his forehead like a cartoon. He would yell and question every possible aspect of our abilities to even do our job. Management would then be brought over and more apologies would be given. And even the occasional refund was given as well. And every time over a free and honestly quite useless paper bag that he always ended up getting anyways. Now, the second story is from the same time but with a different customer. While still working primarily, if not exclusively, the drive-thru, we had another niche semi-regular. Now, what made my location in a chain restaurant fairly unique was that we were pretty accommodating to requests for non-menu items. As long as we could charge you for the ingredients, we would make pretty much whatever you wanted. You want a pickle sundae with chocolate fudge? Sure, we can do that. And seriously, that even happened once. We had a regular that was somehow associated with another staff member. They were like their third cousin or little sister's coworker or something like that. And they would come in, usually in phases, with some new request of some kind. For a month straight, it would be a large sundae layered with very specific toppings to mirror a dessert that they saw on TV. Then it would switch to a new milkshake of whatever flavor combination that they could possibly think of. Now granted, I will give it to the customer. They never complained about price before this incident. However we figured out how to charge them, they would pay it so long as it was reasonable. But there was the usual confusion with the custom orders of how to charge them in the first place. Do we use this menu item as a base and charge them for the extra toppings? We were never really totally sure what to do. This all came to a head when they decided they wanted what they described as a deconstructed dessert, but it was in essence a cup of various candies we use as toppings, with ice cream being used as the topping. Think of how you get whipped cream on hot chocolate at the cafe. Now, my location actually did have a price for a cup of candy that we could charge for, but it was about double the cost of any dessert that this woman had gotten before just as the cup of candy, and the adding of sauce and ice cream. So imagine that maybe her regular dessert was like maybe $5 or $8, because in contrast, she was being charged about $16 for this, which was the best that we could do, even with asking the supervisor on duty. Now, did I mention if we had trouble ringing her in for these weird requests? requests, or even, God forbid, messed up the layers of her stupidly complex and ever-changing sundae were dictated to be, she would then throw an absolute major fit. Think honking, refusing to leave the drive-thru, screaming for a manager. Like, this lady would lose it. Because I worked drive-thru so much, and I became quite good at interpreting her visions for the food, I ended up dealing with her a lot. In the rare shift that I wasn't placed in the drive-thru, they would call me over anyways just to deal with her because I understood what she wanted. I watched her make multiple trainees cry and was often the one called over to deal with her if they messed up an order. I even had supervisors texting me when I was at school asking me how I would make or charge what she was asking for. But anyways, back to the cup of candy monstrosity. As you can probably guess, she was outraged. How on earth could it be so expensive? Well, because you asked for the most expensive candy topping as the base, and you wanted it in this size. But it's basically what she wanted, but just deconstructed. So it's like, okay, based on the fact that you wanted it to be a majority of the candy, and expensive candy to boot, it is this flat price for a cup of candy. And then adding charge for sauce and ice cream. I mean, if you really wanted a truly deconstructed treat, you would get a cup of ice cream and maybe like 2 tablespoons of candy, and a little pump of syrup that would barely fit a ketchup cup. But regardless of all of this, she just lost it. She screamed, she swore, she banged her fists on the steering wheel. She asked me how dare I do this to her, how she had been a loyal customer for years. She was so upset that it got to a point that I, the so-called champion of dealing with her, had to call over a manager. She demanded a refund for the item that she had not bought yet and continued to lose her mind, not to mention the fact that she's blocking the drive-thru. To make a long story short, she ended up getting banned. Maybe partially because if I wasn't dealing with her, she usually had her order refunded and given whatever she asked for free if we made any mistakes on it. But also, it might come down to the fact that she made so many employees cry. But I seriously think that mostly it was because I was the last person that they had that would be willing to deal with her entitled self. But in the end, she was banned, and we didn't see her for quite some time. We heard from the employee that she was associated with that she had been going to other locations, but none of them were as accommodating as us for off-menu requests. And she apparently got banned from a number of other places for pulling the same stuff. Eventually, she started seeing her roommate, and she would bring in a slip of paper and hand it to us. We knew it was this crazy woman's new order, but I, and I'm not sure how many others, would take it and charge it as we saw fit. We never heard another complaint, and I honestly feel bad for the roommate, as she got sent for food a lot, and she didn't seem to be treated well when I used to see her with a crazy woman. But thankfully, we didn't have any issues after that. Wow, I honestly know exactly what this person's talking about when they've had to deal with crazy customers who are just insane. Like, I've dealt with my fair share of like Karens and other people who are just irrational, and let me tell you something, nothing is ever good enough. Like, you can literally do everything right, and you can miss one singular detail, and then they will lose their mind. They freak out, they go crazy, and then it's all your fault. Like, it's not their fault that they have unreasonable demands, it's your fault that you didn't get it exactly the way they wanted it. So truly, I've seen both cases like this in my time in customer service, and people who act like this are seriously some of the worst people you will ever have to deal with. My entitled father-in-law suggested that he sees me as a green card for his son, as opposed to a valuable family member, and at this point, I feel so offended that I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I met my fiance 2 years ago, and for us, it's just instant love. He's Korean and I'm white, so we do have a bit of a cultural difference. Besides that, the only real problem that we have is that my fiance had to go back to South Korea to renew a visa, and sadly, he got denied. So we proceeded with the K1 fiance visa since we met all the requirements, and our immigration lawyer advised us it would be good for us. We got approved, and his interview is September 12th. Then he'll come back to New York in October. It's been really hard with the long distance, but luckily I got to visit him in Korea for 2.5 weeks. On a side note, his parents are very wealthy, and I love and respect his parents, but they get under my skin. During this trip, my father-in-law made comments about my diet and how I need to eat healthier. We only shared meals together a few times, and when we do, we all eat the same thing, but I just eat a smaller portion. I'm also 4'11", and I weigh about 118 pounds, but I was recently diagnosed with high blood pressure. My dad has it, so it's part of my genes. But my father-in-law doesn't get the part that it's genetics, and he's been making rude comments this whole time that I'm here. There's been other things that he said that just get under my skin, but I simply don't have the time to list them all. During lunch, he told me that he's so lucky that his son found me so that he has easy access access to the United States. I was confused and I asked him what he meant, and he said, "It's so hard to get into the United States, but now because of you, he has full access to the US." So I just took it that his father sees me as an easy way for his son to get a green card. And it took a lot for me not to start crying at that moment. My father-in-law also went on a rant that I need to learn Korean and that he expects his grandchild to know Korean as well. While I understand that it is important, my fiance and I are not there yet. He also made rude comments about how my fiance had changed his major from aviation to data science. And I've been hearing those comments since last December. It's like they never tell his son any of this, but they tell me instead. He then once again went off by saying how much money they lost due to the career change, and I told him, okay, I get that you lost money, and I won't understand that, but I just want your son to do whatever makes him happy. But right now, I just don't know if I'm being used for a green card. The love I have for my fiance is so unconditional, and I know how much he loves me. I can feel the love, and I never felt love like that before. But I'm really curious what other people think, because right now, I really don't know what to do. Honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would tell my fiance what was just said to me. Like, your father-in-law is completely out of line, and that is so horrible to imply. I would express that to my fiance and be like, look, this is how your father-in-law is basically talking to me, and I don't like what's happening right now. But regardless, if you really do love your fiance, then I would ignore this man with everything you have in you, because clearly he's just some weird entitled jerk, and you do not need his weird behavior in the slightest. An entitled Karen breaks into our mall, all because she was asked to wait until we actually opened for the day. Things got so bad that she actually got charged with breaking and entering by the police, and ended up getting arrested in the process. And I'm honestly still blown away by this interaction. Here's what happened. Now, before I get into this, I want to give some context. I'm a 31-year-old guy working full-time at my local mall. Usually, I just stick around the food court cleaning tables and stuff like that, but I will go and do some other stuff, such as cleaning the lids off the mall trash cans, cleaning the vendor areas, and stuff like that. One thing we have here at the mall are people who just walk around the mall getting some cardio in, or as we call them, the mall walkers. Now, they do usually buy some things, or get some lunch in the food court, but other than that, they're harmless, just minding their own business and going about their day. Well, a couple of weeks ago on a Saturday, which is our busiest day of the week by the way, I was cleaning the carpets when I saw some mall walkers waiting at one of the entrances next to a clothing department store that I will leave nameless as it will give away where I work. I tried telling them that they would have to wait for security, but one of them pleaded with me to call security and let them in. We usually open the doors at 9 o'clock even though the mall opens at 10 o'clock, so me being the people pleaser that I am, which I am slowly but surely working on, I gave in and I called security. My boss, while he wasn't raging about it, still was not pleased and told me that I can't do that anymore, especially on Saturdays as we would only have one security guard on call. He said that the only thing I could do is ignore them, but if I wanted to tell them that they'd have to wait for security, then don't call them if they beg me to do that. So a couple of days ago, I was doing my rounds and I saw some mall walkers waiting outside the entrance of the food court. So I told them when the mall opens and that they would have to wait. Some of them asked me to call for security, but I told them that I couldn't do that anymore. Some were angry, but they accepted it, except for one lady in particular. She practically banged on the door and demanded that I call security, screaming that I needed to let them in at that very minute. One of the other people there told her to stop, but she was having none of it. I remember her screaming, "I did not come all this way to the mall just to get turned away. I don't care what time you open. I want in and I want in right now." But again, I told her that she has to wait until 10 o'clock in the morning, and it was then that she started going off on me, telling me that I'm a terrible employee. Now, I will admit I rolled my eyes and I just walked away, and when I did that, this made her rage, and she actually started punching the door and screaming at me to come back, which of course I didn't. Now, I did contact security to warn them about her, and they said that they would keep an eye out. Well, not even 5 minutes later, I hear a commotion in the vendor area of the food court, which was in between a sushi bar and a bakery. I contacted security again to tell them about it, and they said they were en route. Well, it turns out the entitled Karen had snuck into the vendor area, leading to both the food court and the jewelry kiosk, and one of the mall employees told her that she couldn't be there. But this again made the Karen go into a rage, and she got in the employee's face and got physical. Now, one thing to note is that this Karen is a white woman who had to be in her 40s, and she was throwing down with a mixed race woman who had to be in her late 20s to early 30s. The Karen was told that she could either just leave the mall and take a permanent ban, or she'd be arrested for breaking and entering and for assault. And I also should note that I was a witness to this conversation between the Karen and the guard. The Karen then told this guard something that I honestly never expected. She said to them, "Or as a third option, you can get lost and let me walk the mall." And it was then at that moment that she said something incredibly racist. This made the the guard jump up and call 911, and they came once the doors had opened. Karen was then taken to jail for breaking and entering, as well as assault and resisting arrest. And it's like, seriously, what is with these Karens and resisting arrest? It's a mystery that I'm sure will never be solved because this lady was completely out of her mind. That's crazy because seriously, who in their right mind would do that to themselves? And I really mean it when I say do that to themselves because seriously, this was a very clear and obvious choice that this entitled Karen made. She very easily could have waited until what, 10 o'clock to have the doors open for her and not try to break in through the back door or something like that. And then she tries to fight the employee. It's like, how did you think that was gonna go? Did you think screaming at someone as you're breaking into the mall was gonna help you out in some way? Was she convinced that, oh yeah, they're gonna let me walk around once I get in here and give them a piece of my mind? Like, no, stupid, you're gonna go to jail. You're literally going to jail for breaking and entering and assault. Not to mention resisting arrest, which is something I can completely see happening. But like, seriously, what was she thinking? It literally just doesn't make any sense, and she definitely had what was coming to her. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled aunt ruins her standing with the family, as well as the inheritance that she was supposed to receive from my grandmother. And despite it all, I'm so glad the situation's been resolved, because what she put us through was truly obnoxious. Here's what happened. So for some backstory that's going to be relevant to the story, in December of 2020, my father agreed to put his father into a nursing home to protect his sister, who is my aunt, from an investigation involving the mistreatment of an elder and getting my grandmother moved into state care. Because of my aunt's negligence, my grandmother had been hospitalized 3 times in 2 months. Ironically, in October of 2021, my aunt would end up in a nursing home after she burned herself with a heating pad and then didn't get medical treatment until the burn was badly infected. In January of 2022, my grandmother passed away at the age of 94 years old. In my grandparents' will, they split their estate between 2 children 50-50. However, because neither my father nor my aunt was on the deed to my grandparents' house, it was signed over to a probate lawyer who would be tasked with selling the house. When my father started going through his mother's affairs in February of 2022, he discovered that the state was on the verge of taking the house because the only bills my aunt bothered paying were the electric bill and the cable bills, and she had not paid property taxes since 2020. My father also discovered that there were 2 massive liens on the house, totaling to about $200,000. One from the nursing home my grandmother had been in, all because my aunt didn't pay them either, and the other one because my aunt convinced my grandmother to take a home equity loan out on the house so that she could buy a car. Initially, she was only supposed to take what she needed for the car, or roughly $6,000. However, my aunt went behind my grandmother's back and would end up taking the full $100,000 the bank offered them. My aunt had been able to co-sign for the loan, so she was authorized to take the full amount. She also never made any monthly payments on the loan because she legitimately thought that loans were money that banks just gave to people for free with no strings attached. My aunt never told anyone what she did with the remaining $94,000, but the rest of the family is suspecting that she gambled it away at local casinos. My aunt was never given full access to my grandmother's bank account, which she had almost completely drained before my grandmother passed, meaning my father had to pay any outstanding bills out of his own pocket, even though he was eventually reimbursed by the lawyer. Some moment between late 2022 and March of 2022, in an attempt to buy herself some time to recover enough to leave the nursing home and thinking that the house couldn't be sold if someone's living in it, my aunt convinced one of her friends to move into my grandmother's vacant house, unbeknownst to my father and the lawyer. And as you can imagine, things got messy when my father found out. Initially, my aunt told my father that the man was there to take care of her 2 cats. However, even after my aunt was court-ordered to sign her 2 cats over to my father due to neglect, the man simply refused to leave. We eventually found out he had broken his lease, moved out of his apartment, and had nowhere else to go except for his and my aunt's daughter's house, who admittedly refused to let her father move in with her. Around April, my parents started to deep clean the disgustingly dirty house with the man still living there, and he did everything in his power to obstruct my parents' efforts. He would call up claiming that he was sick with COVID, which my parents almost always called his bluff on since he was physically disabled and never left the house nor had anyone but my parents visit. One day, he said to my mom that my aunt said apparently he'd be able to live there forever and that my father didn't have the guts to kick him out. Well, my mom told my father what had been said, and the very next day, my father gave this guy an ultimatum. My father said to him, either you leave on your own by May 1st, or I will be evicting you. Well, the man chose the eviction route because apparently my aunt told him that they can't legally evict a disabled person, and he believed her. He ended up having to move in with his daughter, who is no longer speaking to my aunt because my aunt has ruined that woman's livelihood on multiple occasions. However, before he left the house, per my aunt's orders, he stole several valuable pieces of jewelry, including a box of rings that had been willed to her cousins. Thankfully, we were able to get the stolen jewelry back in 2023 after the probate lawyer had to send the police just to retrieve it. Because of the whole squatter incident, we missed a massive housing boom, where houses were selling for significantly more than what they were worth, and the house was put on the market during a slump, and the house ended up being sold for almost $150,000 less than what it was worth. And it led to another lengthy legal battle with my aunt because she refused to sell or throw out any of her furniture until she was court-ordered to do so. Given what the house sold for and deducting the lien from the home equity loan, at the end of all of it, my father ended up just getting $60,000, while my aunt ended up getting just under $50,000. My aunt got less because the probate lawyer charged her more than he charged my father, because she was the one who had drawn things out for so long. Around that time, my aunt had been deemed unfit to make decisions for herself by a judge, and several of her doctors ended up signing her half of the inheritance to my father to avoid losing it to the nursing home that she was in. My aunt passed away on August 1st at the age of 68 from multiple organ failure caused by years of heavy smoking, ignoring her diabetes, and refusing to consent to a surgery that would have likely saved her life. We didn't have a funeral for her. We simply had her cremated, and her ashes along with pictures and other personal belongings were given to her older daughter. My aunt's younger daughter tried to sue my father for the rest of her mom's inheritance, but the suit was quickly dropped since the money my aunt had inherited after my mother's death had already been signed over to my father, so my aunt's daughter had no right to it. Our one saving grace in this whole fiasco was that my aunt was in a nursing home for the entire process, because otherwise this would have been a lot messier. Wow, this story is both sad and also extremely frustrating. Like, it really seems like your aunt did everything possible to try and obstruct this process and everything that went into it. It was so unnecessary and so tedious for literally no reason, especially the part about having someone move into the home so that you couldn't sell it. Like, that in and of itself is just so obnoxious. So truly, I'm so sorry for all the deaths that have happened in your family, even with the death of your aunt, because if she had just been more agreeable, this entire situation could have been significantly better. An entitled Karen receives karma that she absolutely deserves after she calls out me and my family while we're on holiday. Here's what happened. So my family and I went to Crete on holiday. It was a lovely all-inclusive hotel with a beach close by and some decent food, drinks, a pool, and some sunbeds. Basically, all of the fun things you could possibly want. The hotel was mainly people from Denmark, and thinking back, I don't actually remember there being anyone else but Danish people. And for reference, I'm from Denmark myself. There was a woman and her husband who also spent the week at the hotel when we were there. The husband was very quiet and seemed to just be dragged around by her. We got quite used to her complaining at dinner, as well as her fussy way of marching up to the young holiday guy to the hotel and nagging at them, but we did not mind her much at first. Me and my family love experiencing local culture, and while exploring the city we were in, on top of a tall hill at the back of the city, we found a wonderful local restaurant. And it wasn't even really a restaurant. It was a Greek mama who cooked in her kitchen and let people eat on her terrace with a beautiful view of the sea. It was very humble and the food was honest and amazing. It was just delicious in every way. The mama was so caring and kind and kept coming to interact with us, and it was amazing. So we ate a couple of times by her along this week. One night coming back to the hotel, this entitled Karen came marching up to us. She looked at us and said, "How dare you?" Now all of us were really confused and we looked at her and said, "What?" This Karen continued, "You have paid for your all-inclusive meals and then you don't even eat dinner here?" We responded by saying, "Well, we paid for it so we can do what we want with it. And if we want to eat somewhere else, we can definitely do that." The Karen was still up in arms about this. She screamed at us by saying, "Well, don't you think that's a massive waste?" We responded by saying, "Well, I'm sure they're used to it." But this Karen said, "Well, I think it's disrespectful and you ought to know better." And after she said that, all of us just basically left and walked away from her. Well, the next day, her and her husband had booked this hike through a gorge. And I think it's called Samaria Gorge or something like that. You hike through this nature area, then you end up in the city, only available either by walking there or taking a boat. Then, when arriving at the city, you take a boat and then a bus to go back to the hotel. Well, it's important to note that the lady and the husband weren't exactly fit. The reason we know what happened is because her and her husband were missing at breakfast. When they arrived later, her thundercloud was so heavy that the whole hotel felt it. We then saw a very shaken hotel guide, a girl maybe about 20 years old, coming up to try and comfort her, and then she told her the story. Well, apparently the Karen and the husband had taken this hike, and halfway through their bodies had given up. They were too far in to return, so they had to wait for a couple of donkeys from the city to come pick them up and carry them them to the end destination. Once arriving at the city, the last boat had just sailed, and so they had to rent a hotel for the night at an absolutely overpriced amount, and then the next morning take the boat and then the bus back. After this, while the Karen still was like a thundercloud the rest of the holiday, we didn't really hear anything more from her. She and her husband stuck to each other in the corners and were much more quiet. I feel really sorry for them for ruining their own holiday, but I am glad for us, because they didn't ruin anything for us, but ever since then, just given us a lot to laugh about. So it honestly must be hard to be that entitled, and I overall really feel bad for the husband, because I can only imagine what he goes through on a daily basis. Yeah, it's really funny to watch people who like try to mouth off at you at your decisions to finally receive like that subtle karma for even speaking up in the first place. She really tried to be like, wow, you're wasting money by going somewhere else. But seriously, if I was in Greece and I had the chance to experience local cuisine, then I would absolutely jump at that chance. Like, what's wrong with experiencing the culture locally? So yeah, I find this situation incredibly funny, and it really seems like in a subtle way, this Karen got exactly what she deserved. My friend is making me feel suffocated and feels entitled to all of my free time just because her life is not going well. And after trying to set boundaries in some kind of way, she is still not getting the picture. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I want to start off by saying that I've tried so many times to be understanding and patient with my friend, but it's getting to the point where I'm feeling used. And it's almost like she thinks she's entitled to all of my free time. First off, I know that I'm overloaded. I'm working 6 days till late most days, doing interviews to try and find a better job, and juggling a busy social and personal life outside of work too. But this one friend just doesn't get it. She will literally try to cram multiple meetups, and when we toss around dates that we could actually meet up and hang out, she will use that as an opportunity to plan for both days. She'll say something like, I know we decided on the 10th, but I got tickets for the 12th too. And then she would get upset when I'm not free anymore by being like, oh yeah, well you said you could go the 12th as well, when in reality it was just an option between 2 different days. Usually for days like the 12th, I'm either trying to plan mental health or rest days, run some errands, or I have another event I'm trying to squeeze in. Sometimes I flat out say no and pray that she doesn't ask why not. Other times I feel bad and give an explanation, but she gets sulky or literally tries to slither around my other plans to make it work. She does this every meetup, and I'm constantly having to be the bad guy that has to let her down, and it's honestly really tiring and a terrible feeling, and it's extra time, work, money, and mental stress. I know she does it to escape all the crap in her life, namely her crappy family, boyfriend, job, etc. I mean, she hates all of it, so I try very hard to compromise. I'll say something like, how about we just do a call tonight? I am here to vent if you need it. But she's insisting on doing things. Fancy restaurants, shopping, concerts, movies, random expensive activities, etc. And the excuse is always, oh, I don't want to talk about it. I just want a distraction. But seriously, isn't that just a bit entitled? Demanding all of my free time? And I'm not allowed to say anything or negotiate. I'm just supposed to say nothing and go along with whatever she wants. And to top it all off, it's usually expensive. In this economy, I can't be paying so much just to see her and fill her void. I didn't mind it at first, knowing that she's stressed out, but does she know that I get stressed out too? I honestly just feel really used. I've tried explaining to her gently that I'm busy and I can only do a certain amount of meetups a month. Like, this is me trying to set boundaries, but still she will push and push even more and refuse to justify any of it. She expects me to comply, and then I look bad for constantly saying no. I'm honestly so exhausted and I seriously don't know what to do. Yeah, what you're describing sounds awful, and it does not sound fair for you at all. Like, it's one thing if you wanted to like spend time and have any kind of like, I don't know, get together with your friend, but it's an entirely different thing than what your friend is currently trying to do with you. Like, this sounds incredibly intrusive and very annoying. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would feel very similar. I would say to myself that yes, I need to have time for myself, and I can't spend all my time taking care of my friend, because after a while, just like the original poster, this really would be suffocating. And in my opinion, I think you deserve way better than dealing with that on a daily basis. My entitled cousin tried to claim that I didn't work hard enough in life, and he actually made the right decisions and did everything himself. But this is simply not true, as he has literally had everything handed to him his entire life, while I've had an awful upbringing from the very beginning. Here's what happened. So I had narcissistic and awful parents. I was hit mentally and physically all the time. I was demoralized, sleep deprived, and then some. As a result, I spent most of my energy during my childhood and my young adulthood just surviving. I got zero help from my parents, and they even actively sabotaged me. They thought I was nothing. They didn't support me financially, and they wouldn't even pick me up in the evening from the bus stop from the time I was 12 if it was inconvenient for them. So I had to walk the 2 miles hundreds of times from the age of 12 to 18, sometimes sometimes even during midnight. Still, I slowly managed to crawl out of the void. I got an awful part-time job, I managed to get an education, and eventually I got an okay paying full-time job, a girlfriend, and then I moved out. Now I'm 35, and unfortunately with this economy, I will never own a house or apartment, and will never be able to finance any kids or a family. Meanwhile, my cousin had like the best family ever. His dad would pick him up at like 1 o'clock in the morning from a party, when he had to get up at 6 in the morning the same day for his job. He was always encouraged and got positive feedback. He didn't have to work a crappy part-time job because his parents financed his education 100% during the first few years. Then he met a richer woman, and he moved out when he was like 22, and she financed him for the next 5 years, so he didn't have to work at all and could concentrate on his studies and be finished several years earlier. After that, he got a juicy job with the help from his dad in a big company starting at the age of 28, and a year later, his girlfriend's parents gifted him with an acre of property for free, and this was in a better location and a more expensive state, so they saved like thousands of dollars. They then built a home on the property and are now expecting their first child, and he is 32 years old. When we meet at family reunions, he has the audacity to tell me that I didn't work hard enough, and when confronted with how easy he had it compared to me, he just shrugs it off and claims that he didn't work very hard to get his master's degree and is working hard at his job right now. And according to him, he just made the smart decisions and managed to do everything himself while I didn't. Needless to say, I dislike him very much and I avoid his presence. But how can people's brains function like this? His parents finance everything, and then he had a wealthy girlfriend. He didn't have to work part-time, got a well-paying job in a big company through daddy's intervention, and got gifted a huge property, saving him over $100,000. And they get gifted large sums of money. We're talking like $2,000 from his wife's parents and his parents from time to time, just to help them with the expenses of the house. I mean, how can anyone delude themselves into believing that all of this was because of smart decisions and managing everything by themselves? I honestly feel so offended, and I seriously don't know what to do. Yeah, your cousin's a piece of crap and he has no idea what he's talking about. This guy literally had everything handed to him, and he has the audacity to be like, oh, I made smart decisions and I did everything myself. It's like, no, you didn't. Literally everything was handed to you. Your house, your job, your education. Like, this is not even comparable to the original poster, because the original poster had an awful upbringing. They had parents who did not support them and quite literally did nothing for them. For this guy to be like, oh, you just didn't work hard enough. Like, that guy's a moron, and I would not let that guy bother you in the slightest. So yeah, your cousin's a piece of garbage, and I don't blame you for feeling the way that you do about him in the slightest. A toxic coworker tried to get me fired with false accusations, all because she hated the fact that I was gay, claiming that she never would have gotten this job in the first place if she knew that she would be working for an awful sinner. And I'm still blown away by this lady's awful treatment towards me. Here's what happened. So back in the early 2000s, I was the IT manager for a small company. In May of one year, I hired someone who we will call Robin, the first female in our department. She was a church friend for one of the team members, and he recommended her. I made sure she met the other team members and gave them time without me present. I not only got his feedback, but I made sure that she had a good vibe from him before I hired her. Everyone got along and things were running smoothly for several months. The Friday before Thanksgiving, we had a company get-together and everyone's spouses came, and that's when Robin met my husband. I left on Saturday for a 2-week vacation, and when I got back, my boss called me before I could even boot up my computer and asked me to come into his office. While I was gone, Robin accused me of being extremely inappropriate with her specifically, if you know what I mean. HR did their investigation and said they could find no evidence of it because it never happened, but offered to transfer her to another department, and she just declined. Then she said I was an incompetent manager. Now, my style was to assign projects based on people's skills and interests, or let them decide amongst themselves who was going to do what if it wasn't that specific. The other two people in the department loved the freedom and trust, but apparently Robin did not. My boss said that she couldn't point out any specific requests that she made that I was unresponsive to, nor could she think of any time that I singled her out or treated her differently. The fact that I wasn't micromanaging her made me a bad manager in her eyes. My boss told her that might be new to her, but that was how he managed too, and he had never heard anyone complain about being trusted too much or given too much freedom. He suggested that she tell me that she needed more oversight. She said she wasn't comfortable having that conversation, so he offered to do it for her. And that's when she said that she couldn't work with me because I'm gay. My boss asked her if I said or did anything inappropriate, and she said no. In fact, prior to meeting my husband, she thought I was talking about a roommate when I referred to him. Apparently, being gay was against her religious beliefs, and she never would have taken the job had she known. known. My presence created a hostile work environment for her, so he had to fire me. She was also outraged that my boss dared to call himself a Christian and would accept someone so blatantly sinful. My boss told her to get over it or quit because he was not firing me over her religious beliefs. And well, fast forward and she did end up quitting. When I got back to my desk, the guy who recommended her said that she started stirring stuff up at church, trying to get him thrown out of the congregation since he knew I was gay. He said the church had several lesbian and gay members and never said anything negative about someone being gay, so he was very surprised by her stance, and the preacher even asked her to not come back. So I was completely blown away by Robin's sense of entitlement. She thought her being an evangelical Christian meant that she could dictate who a company could hire or who could attend a church, but I was so thankful that everyone, namely my boss, HR, my team, and even an unknown preacher, had my back during one of the most ridiculous experiences of my life. Wow, Robin is a piece of garbage. Seriously, you can't treat someone like that. Like, what she was requesting is incredibly illegal. You can't fire someone just because they're gay, and you can't make up false accusations of someone mistreating you at the office, especially in the way that Robin was describing this. Like, this wasn't like bullying. These were accusations of something a little bit more like, I don't know, private and personal, if you know what I mean. Like, she just literally made that up to be like, oh, now you have to fire him because I don't want to work for a gay person. Like, what kind of attitude is that? Like, I will never understand people who treat other human beings like that and then profess to be Christ-like and loving when seriously, like, you're literally ostracizing an entire group of people who I'm pretty sure you're supposed to classify as like children of God, right? Like, that kind of garbage is so hypocritical in my opinion, and I just can't stand when people act like that. So to the original poster, I'm so sorry that she tried to get you fired for being gay, because that kind of behavior is completely unacceptable. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled old jerk demands that I bend over backwards to accommodate his hatred of technology, as he refuses to do anything to make his life easier in making his return and getting any of his money back. Here's what happened. Okay, so I work retail, and this guy bought something online and had it delivered. After receiving it, he decided he didn't want it anymore, so he asked to return it for a refund. I said to him, sure, no problem. Just send it back with a returns form found on our website and ship it back to us. Well, when I said that, he got super pissed off because he had to print a form, and he said to me, well, like most people my age, I don't have a printer. So I said to him, okay, totally fine. Don't print out the form, but instead just include a handwritten note, and then you can ship it back to us. He asked me how he's supposed to do that, and I wasn't sure what to say, so I said, by taking it to the post office? And this is where he became even more angry. He said to me, and what, you're expecting me to pay for shipping? I tried to say, well, it is your choice to send it back to us, but that's when he exploded. He said to me, back in my day, stores provided a little something called customer service. I expect to receive that from you as well. Annoyed at the entitlement, but also just exhausted from this garbage, I agreed to provide a return label. I asked him to move the conversation to email though, since I can't provide him a return label over the phone. So he sent his email, rehashed all of his nonsense from the phone call, and I replied by saying the following: I can provide you a return label, but you need to be able to print it off so you can attach it to the item. Well, that was 2 months ago, and he never replied to that email. Today he called back, and for the sake of the story, we'll call him Bob. He called in and said, hi, it's Bob, do you remember me? I said to him, sorry Bob, but I speak to many people every day, you'll have to refresh my memory. And with that, he was fuming all over again. It was like me not remembering him was the worst sort of insult. Well, he rehashed everything again, and then it all came flooding back to me. My immediate thought was, well, didn't this happen months ago? And guess what? I was right, it did. I checked the email chain and I sent my email on June 16th. He again complained about having to ship it back himself and having to have access to a printer. But I just said, because I was annoyed, that this is the way the world works now and I cannot change that. So he said to me, I'm sick of this. I've had enough of this for today, so I'll call back later. And then he just straight up hung up. Now, I was hoping that would be the last of him for another 2 months, but no. He replied to my email from 2 months ago within the hour. He again started complaining about how we have made this difficult for him and that we should make accommodations for people that don't have a printer. I replied by saying we can provide you a PDF of the label, and if you don't have a printer, then you can ask a friend or a relative or even the post office to print it for you. Well, here's the kicker, the absolute cherry on top of his entitlement. He starts screaming at me, this is your problem to fix, not mine. Your store has set up a system that requires the use of a printer without any consideration for people that are too old to use modern technology. I will not go out of my way to fix a problem that you created. created. You need to tell the courier to print the label themselves and have them deliver the label to my house." And I thought to myself, wow, I haven't replied yet, but there are so many things I would like to say. Firstly, this is our system? Well, welcome to the 21st century, you decrepit idiot. We didn't invent the need for a printer. Also, couriers are the ones that generate the PDF, not us. But that is the easiest way to do it. Your refusal to understand that does not make you right. Secondly, this is definitely a you problem. I understand not owning your own printer because I don't own one either, but you could easily take the PDF to a friend or a family member that does have one. Even if you don't have friends or family, you could take the item to the post office and ask them to print the label and stick it on the stupid parcel. But no, you have such a vendetta against technology that you refuse to partake in it. It's almost as if you think finding a printer somehow enables this behavior, and your refusal to use a printer is an act of defiance, meant to break us from our reliance on technology. Also, we can go back to a simpler time. Well, buddy, I've had enough. Either pay to ship it back yourself or just forget about your refund. You don't want to enable our reliance on technology? Okay, fine. But I don't want to enable your entitlement. So if this is our stalemate, so be it. We don't lose anything. You're the one that wants to refund it all because you changed your mind. So honestly, the next move is definitely up to this guy. Wow, that's really annoying. Like seriously, if I worked at a job and they're like, "Oh wow, this is your problem," like that would be super obnoxious and I would not handle that well. Because seriously, why are you blaming me for your inability to get stuff done? That doesn't make any sense. It literally doesn't make any sense. Like this is not my fault. He could easily put that copy of the PDF on a thumb drive and take it over to just about any major store and print it on a machine that I'm sure they have available. Or even go to a local library. Like that would be so simple it's not even funny. So yeah, this guy was just completely out of his mind and he's just being super lazy about this entire process. And I'm right there with the original poster because this is absolutely not your problem. My awful roommate tried to take control of my entire life, even going as far as trying to give me a curfew, demanding that I come and go only as she sees fit. And I'm seriously so glad that I don't have to live with her any longer. Here's what happened. So my roommate and I chose to be roommates because we thought that we would get along, but she started getting all entitled and weird when she realized that we had different schedules. Now, a bit of backstory about the both of us. I'm from middle class, even lower middle class suburb, and I was the opposite of spoiled. She came from a rich town where she had a 3-story home and was never told no. So we had very different backgrounds clearly. I was at school on a scholarship from the state, and she chose the school because the city has way more diversity than she's used to, and she wanted to experience the culture of New York. We shared a bedroom because it was a dorm. She played on a sports team, so she had to be up early, but I didn't. So I would usually stay in my other friend's room until about midnight. I would usually come back to the dorm, not even turn the lights on, and just crawl into bed. Sometimes I'd go into our kitchen and chill in there if I didn't want to go to sleep yet, but it is a separate room. Now, she, on the other hand, would wake up at 4 in the morning, turn on every single light, blast music to get her pumped for practice, and FaceTime her teammates. One day, I was about to go out to see my friends at like 8 o'clock, and she was already in bed, and she asked me to shut the lights off and hurry up as if it was midnight. I said I'll be out in a few, and she was so annoyed. Before I left, she told me that I must be home by 10:30, and I said, well, I'll be back by midnight. And she actually said to me, "No, I have practice, you don't have to go out, and you're so loud when you open up the door." And after she said that, I just kind of left because like seriously, what in the world is she talking about? I decided to talk to her the next morning and tell her how loud she was, but she didn't stop. So I told her that I'll come back home early when she stops going to soccer, because why should I not have a life just because she must be in bed at 8 o'clock? Now, another night, I had a serious cough. I got bronchitis at the end of the semester, and one night I was trying to sleep but kept coughing. And after a while, she snapped up out of bed. She looked at me and said, "If you're gonna do that, how about you just go in the kitchen?" And obviously, in that instance, I just said no. She also once told me to stop getting sick because it scares her and makes her anxiety worse. There was another time when she got mad at me because the shower was cold. The conversation went something like, did you take a shower?" And I said, "No, I showered last night." And she said to me, "Well, you must have because it's cold and you did something to it." But I just responded by saying, "I just said I didn't take a shower." Well, it turns out the whole dorm's showers were broken, and of course, I didn't get a single apology for that. Another time, I went home for the weekend, and she called me to tell me her friend was gonna sleep over in my bed. And I said no. And surprise, surprise, why was my bed messed up when I got back? Another time, she told me the night before my final that her friend's sleeping over in our room. And mind you, she didn't ask me, but instead she told me. Well, I said I had a final, and her response was that she already told her friend she can fly in from out of state months ago. And trust me when I say this, they were so loud. My other favorite moment was when she got mad at me that I wouldn't go home on my birthday weekend. She wanted her boyfriend to sleep sleep over, and it was my birthday, but I wanted to hang out with my friends instead. But still, she told me to just go home and hang out with my family. And my favorite also was when I went home for winter break and she decided to stay behind. She asked me, "Did you come back at all during break?" And I said to her, "I've been home for 3 weeks." She then said to me, "Well, my sweater went missing along with other stuff, and I don't want to accuse you, but I think I saw you post it in something similar." I responded by saying, "I've been an hour away at home for almost a month." And yet even when I said that, she still didn't believe me. She asked me, "Are you sure you didn't take it?" So I said to her, "Did you leave your laundry in the wash and forget to take it upstairs?" Well, she had no response until I came back. And the best part about it is that she's 5'2" and I'm 5'9". We are literally completely different sizes. So needless to say, we did not work out as roommates, and I'm really glad that we don't have to live together any longer. Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare roommate, because seriously, what is her problem? She was actually trying to make you have a curfew of some kind, and here you are, an adult in college. Like, that's not gonna work for a second, and that is so annoying. But the best part about this entire story, in my opinion, is the fact that you did not take any of her garbage. You defended yourself every single time, and you always had something to say in response to her stupid demands. Like, you didn't give an inch to this lady, and I think that's absolutely amazing. Because seriously, your former roommate sounded incredibly controlling, and I know if I was living in that situation, I would be completely miserable. Am I the jerk for uninviting 25 family members after they collectively demanded that I change my wedding venue, all because they felt like a Halloween-themed wedding would be demonic and something they didn't want to be a part of? Here's what happened. So I've had this Halloween wedding planned for almost 2 years. The venue that I wanted has a wait list, and all of a sudden, my mom and grandma decided the wedding was demonic and want me to make last-minute changes. Well, I told my mom and grandma a firm no. 2 years my family has known about this, and because I told them no, half of my mom's side of the family thought that they would be cute and say that they aren't coming in some kind of power struggle. Well, I told them fine and canceled everyone's invitations who complained, or even backed my mom or grandma on this issue. One of my sisters acted like she stepped out of bridesmaid duty, so I just replaced her. It was about 25 people that decided to act stupid at the less than 6-week mark, so I sent out new invitations, and those included a QR code for those attending that the venue will be using to check people in and only allow those people in to my wedding. Now, my aunt, who was one of the people who were uninvited, told me that people are allowed to disagree with me, and that this doesn't mean that I can pull an invitation from a wedding that most of them had made plans to already attend. Well, I told my aunt that they had 2 years for complaints, but saying that they are not going at the 6-week mark before my wedding is complete and utter garbage, and everyone messed around and found out, and I will not be bullied by my family over this. So am I the jerk for uninviting a large portion of my family to my wedding? Because right now I've upset a lot of people, and at this point I don't know what to do. No, you are not the jerk, and I'm honestly so proud of you. I don't even know you, and this seriously brought a smile to my face. Why on earth would anybody in their right mind, after knowing that you had planned this for 2 years, try to speak up and be like, "Wow, this is really demonic. You need to change your wedding right now, even though it's 6 weeks before it's supposed to happen." And then on top of that, they thought they could pull some kind of power play and be like, "Oh, if we all say we're gonna back out, then they will have to change the wedding venue." It's like, people, what on earth were you thinking? That is such a stupid thing to do, it's not even funny. The same people who were saying, "Oh yeah, this is demonic," are the same people who would dress their kids up and have them walk around on Halloween getting candy. Like, they are complete morons for doing that, and it's just completely unfair to the original poster. And best of all, they knew about this for 2 years. And now, not even a month before Halloween, they're trying to make a big deal out of it? Like, no, that is absolutely not okay, and I don't blame you for uninviting them in the slightest. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, because these people absolutely had it coming. Am I the jerk for making my pregnant sister-in-law cry after she kept asking me the same question over and over again regarding why I changed my name? Because after listening to this for several months, as well as enduring her weird interrogation of me and my life choices, I finally hit my breaking point, snapping at her in a way that I don't think anybody truly expected. Because at this point, I'm very frustrated and I seriously do not know what to do. Here's what happened. So my brother is married to a woman who we will call Haley, and they're expecting a baby together. Last year, I officially changed my name from Evelyn to Indy, which was a nickname from my original middle name. My parents gave in after realizing how serious I was about being Indy and how I was not warming up to or even growing into being Evelyn. My brother and Haley want an older vintage name for their baby, and Haley asked me about 5 months ago why I disliked Evelyn enough to change the name. At the time, she brought up how popular the name has become and how vintage is back. But I told her I didn't like vintage names, and to me it sounded really old-fashioned. I told her the popularity insecurity didn't influence my decision, but she wanted to know the reason for my disliking older names and why I like something like Indy instead. And honestly, I didn't mind her asking the first time. Well, she brought it up again a week later, and she asked the same question and pressed more for why. She then asked a third and fourth time. I gave her the same answer, and I asked her why she kept asking me the same question. I told her my answer wasn't going to change, but when the seventh time came around that she asked me, she admitted that she was worried her baby would hate having an older name and wanted to figure out what she could do to prevent what happened to me happening to her. She also said that she'd like me to rethink my name because she thought Evelyn was beautiful, and she was sad that I chose something like Indy over it. I asked her to stop so many times already, and I even asked my brother to stop her, but he told me that I needed to understand that it was the hormones. And at this point, I can easily say that she's asked me this more than 25 times by now, and I wish I was exaggerating that number too, but I'm not. Well, fast forward, and 2 weeks ago when she brought it up again, she felt like I had made a mistake changing my name and how 30-year-old me wouldn't be so against Evelyn. I told her that 30-year-old me can deal with it when that happens. She told me that I didn't really have a good reason to like the name, and Indy seemed like the kind of name that someone young would like, but not someone older. Well, yesterday came along and I kind of lost my temper. She started out asking the same stuff, and the baby is almost ready to be born, so I know it's all coming to an end, but she asked me to really think about why and to help her, because she couldn't figure out what she'd do differently than what my parents did. Then she said that they really should not have let me change my name so young, and at that point, I finally snapped. I told her to stop asking me the same question, because my answer won't change, and her comments are not changing my mind because I don't like old-fashioned names. I told her that I think they're awful, and I'm sick and tired of hearing about how much better they are, and having her try to make me find a reason she finds acceptable. I told her that just like she hates Indy, I hate Evelyn, and she needs to let it go already. Well, after I snapped, she burst into tears, and my brother got so mad at me, and my parents even questioned why I spoke to her so harshly. So am I the jerk in this situation? Because seriously, I am very frustrated and I don't know what to do. Okay, this is insane to me because Haley sounds like a complete moron. If someone asked me the same question 25 plus times and was somehow expecting a different answer every single time, I think I would also lose my mind. Like, why is she interrogating you over something so stupid? If she wants to name her kid something vintage, then go for it. But for them to bother the original poster like this and obsess over it for 5 months, like that's not her pregnancy hormones. That's her being a control freak weirdo. As if your answer needs to change the 27th time that she asked it, because she's clearly looking for validation for the stupid name she's gonna name her kid. Like seriously, get a grip, this is so insane. And the fact that anyone's like, whoa, why are you getting so mad? What's going on right now? It's like, are you kidding me? You've literally been bothered about this for months. She's asked you the same question over and over and over again. Like I would lose my mind after the 10th time, let alone the 27th time. So no, you are definitely not the jerk in this situation, because the way Haley was acting was absolutely insane. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.